Recording in progress.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Councilor McBride. I'm calling to order the Property Reviews Committee special meeting of Wednesday, May 10th. It is 5:33. For roll call, it's myself, Councilor McBride. Bob Frink is here, Hal Zott is here, and Lauren Gauthier is here as well. There's a few others that indicated they will be coming in via Zoom, so I will wait to see, and I'll let them in once they're here. Is there any public comment? I don't see anyone on, so I don't have any public comment. With regards to communications, the only communications I have is that I did attend the Economic Development Commission meeting last Thursday, and I spoke to them about this, where we're at, tried to solicit some feedback from them and the importance of them reviewing the document. The chair, I think it's Boris, is it right?
Is Boris the chair?
Yeah, I think he's the chair now. So I spoke to him and I said I'll be submitting. Well, I want to check with John Burt. I spoke with John Burt the next morning. He said it's fine. So I've submitted the most recent document, not the one that we have tonight, the one that we had that was publicly available last Wednesday. I submitted that document to him. He said he and the commissioners were going to review it and provide us feedback. And I expressed to him the timing that we're trying to wrap this up, this meeting and next meeting, in order to put it on the 23rd agenda. They said they'd provide comment, but that's the only communication I've had. Great. Any other communication from any other committee members? No. Okay, approval of the minutes. I believe Scott was working on both of those drafts. I have not seen him, so we'll have to defer until he shows up and provides them, or until the next meeting. And for old business, we're going to move on to the draft policy, and I'll probably defer to Lauren. I think you've been running a lot of this since I've been absent one meeting and half absent the second. So I'll roll it over to you now. If you know, you're doing terrific work. So we continue on. You know where we left off. You're kind of taking the lead here. That would be appreciative.
Yeah, sure. So I think where we left off, we got through the main part of the document. I know we said we were going to stop at 14, but we ended up mixing the whole paragraph. So it stops at 12 for this first section. And then we began on the next section, which is disposition of town property process. And
I have to do that 6:40 tonight.
Okay. John Goodrich has arrived at 5:35.
So I just have a comment, the titling between decision on property process and then disposition of town property process. For a long time, I just thought this was repeating the same information until I realized it really is not. Is there any title change that we want to kind of give a different, like a different?
What page are we on?
We're on page 7. But, so decision on disposition, and then actually, I guess I could just, I'm probably being pedantic.
No, I think that's what we're here for. Any comments people should bring. That's what we're.
Unless this is phase 2. Okay.
Yeah, we could call it phase 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So phase 1.
For now.
Yeah. Phase 1, make a decision. Phase 2. I guess it's either. Well, can we call it phase? Because the next one after this is non-town property, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm being pedantic.
I see a big, big difference. Anyway.
That's fine.
So phase 1 and phase 2.
Well, we don't have to do phases because that doesn't make sense if it's like the decision to do it and then you branch off either way. It's not
Until we get a better name.
I don't think we need to change it up. I think
the decision is these pages, right? The early pages. Okay.
Yep, the decision on how you get there. And then now you're actually disposing.
So the first one was reuse evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
This is
one's an evaluation.
disposition.
And you're right. So and maybe instead of decision on disposition, we call it evaluation of disposition.
Well, the first one was evaluation.
Well, if you and then there's like a subtitle right there.
Disposition on.
That's where I'm getting. I'm turning on. But like I said, I'll give it up. Move forward with that.
No, I think why don't you continue with that, because that's people need to understand the difference between the 4 or 5 different cases.
At your leisure. When you think about it, you know, right?
Yeah, all right, I'll think about it a little bit more. Hi, Portia, hi, John.
Hey, Lauren.
We're on page 7 right now. Do you have an extra copy for them?
Yes.
Yeah. We're picking up where we left off, or
Picking up where we left off.
I got all my notes. I got
Just a few?
page 7, you said?
Since Larry's not here, I guess I don't really see, much. Oh, there we go. Oh, I see it now. This is what I'm trying to determine what the difference between what Larry sent and wanted to get his comments in. And then he sent back something. I can't differentiate between what I had written and what he had written.
Is his area the shaded area? Is that what you're?
Those are my areas.
Okay.
And unless he's doing the yellow. Yeah, it's personal. Oh, I see the difference. Okay. Maybe. Or does the manager? I had to open it up to find the comments pane. Found it. Got it. So let's just start off. If the final decision is to dispose of a town-owned property, hyphenate that, the following needs to take place. And there needs to be a colon. A property reuse committee shall be created by the town council via personnel and appointments committee for the duration of an assigned property sale. Any comments on that first sentence?
Just the name, property reuse committee, that's what I thought we did. Right? This is like an RFP something. Right? I mean, the reuse has been determined. Now we're going to disposition. It's a property disposition committee. Right? Or
Right, I think it's the prop level then you off the RFP committee, right? So the property reuse committee then creates the RFP subcommittee. Like the RFP people are the subcommittee of the property reuse, right? So
this is a new committee of a large number of people.
Right, so what I'm seeing is the TOP makes its recommendation and the council goes, okay, thank you. And then hands it over to the property reuse committee. So it's a separate body, right?
Well, they hand it over to the town council. Then town council does something with it.
And this is the subcommittee.
Yeah, okay.
So that's where we're at. Town council has made their decision. And now they're doing something with it. So if this is an already established committee, maybe instead of saying it shall be created, we can say the property reuse committee will be chair, you know what I mean? Like the town council directs the property reuse committee to begin.
Somewhere we ought to say
It's our process.
the purpose. What is the purpose? What do they do?
Okay.
You know.
Can we back up just for a second? Because I'm on the same point as you. Page 5, where it talks about that last paragraph at the end, talks about the town council shall hold a public information meeting. All. My thought was similar to what you were saying, was the TOP presents this information, provides it to the council, but I thought this wording was a little too much pushing that the town council has to do in this direction. So I thought this wording should be more like the town council will review the TOP advisory committee's report, and if desired, will hold a public information meeting to present the report and to gather information. Because doesn't the TOP just provide it to the council? The council can just,
which
I'm on page 5,
Yeah.
the last paragraph.
okay,
The
9.
first
Right,
sentence.
sorry. It says the town council shall, I mean, this committee, this document can't tell, should, at least in my opinion, shouldn't tell the council what to do. It should provide it to the council. And this wording, in my opinion, would be the town council will review the TOP advisory committee report, and if desired, will hold a public information meeting, present the report. And then the notice, if they desire to do that, they could just desire to just put this away, not do anything
Right.
with it.
So that's the thing. We ran our list tree. Like,
Okay, all right.
And essentially, so first of all, the town council will be adopting this as policy. So it's not like TOP's telling them randomly. They're telling themselves by the policy as written, right? And the idea is that we don't want to go through this whole process, write a report, and then have it shelved because town council is made up of a certain type of leadership that shelved. and then it never moves to light of day for the public. Right, it's never publicly presented, never publicly defended, right? And this is the public information meeting is not the same as a public hearing. So it doesn't have the same legal kind of restrictions around it the way a public hearing does as far as noticing and
That's some finality.
and find some finality.
Okay, so I didn't know you had discussed that, so I'll move on from that, but I'm back to. If the council does do that, then I'm kind of in agreement with you. It's a different committee than the property reuse committee, because we are the property reuse committee.
Right, and I agree. So I think we don't need to say that it shall be created. Rather, the property reuse committee shall be to deal with the recommendation. However we want to word it, but we don't want to. We don't.
So then we just need to take out number 2, right?
Well, we don't want to recreate the committee, but we also don't want to circumvent it by having it go straight to an RFP development committee, right?
Agree with that. But is it getting confusing because we're using the same terminology of this committee, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah, we're a temporary thing, right, to get this process enacted.
And then there's gonna be a formal.
The total is the permanent element. And then whatever this thing is, property, maybe it is.
Yeah, I thought this was supposed to morph into a more permanent. Wasn't that always the idea, or no?
Yes, I'm just wondering if the naming is gonna get confusing.
I agree that
This committee.
I agree that that name, maybe we should have called ourselves something different to begin with so we could use this, but I don't think we can name this the exact same thing. I think it needs a new name. So it just changes some letters someplace, because sometime in the future, at some point, we'll look at this and it will be confusing. What is the property reuse committee? And you're right, it's mostly at this point, it is an RFP process committee.
Yeah.
So if I can say number 2 sounds almost exactly like the taupe.
It does.
So, I mean, even it's if we look, let's go back and look at the what we say the taupe is, and then look at this property reuse committee. It's almost the same members. Town councilor 2, chair 2 councilors, town staff, member of each property, or does it say, or the 5 relevant town committees.
I think the intent was that the people that were involved in the tow process should be should represent the committee that's going to ensure the RFP process is being adhered to, following the TOP's recommendation, right? Isn't that the story?
Where did this come from? Who authored this? You?
There's been so many. I don't know. I mean, and if it was me, I
But expand.
would change it.
I
And
cared about a month ago.
it may have been me.
After meeting with the town manager.
Yeah, I think this is an amalgamation of a couple different documents and inputs.
And it looks that way.
Well, I can tell you, it wasn't the town manager didn't get it this detail. If it was that time period, it would have been me. But I'm up for blowing it up, whatever we got to do to make it right.
So here's my thing is, if I understand that initially the nature was for this to be temporary, but who's going to decide that it goes away? The mayor? Is there a time limit on the establishment of the property reuse?
This committee, or
This committee where we are right now, we are currently calling ourselves property.
I
reuse
think-
committee.
I can't speak for the mayor or anyone else, but I think this committee disbands itself, and some of you may get involved in different parts of this, whatever this is going to be called.
But why?
That's where I'm going. Why? Why can't this become the property reuse committee?
It could become, but it doesn't necessarily have to.
It doesn't necessarily have to be, but here we already are. We've got representatives. They don't necessarily need to be the same from the top. And what I would say is, once the town council decides what it wants to do with it, it would come to a committee like this, even if it has a different name, and say, okay, make me an RFP. Right? If they decide, and that's only if they decide to go forward with like a sale. If they decide to keep it, like own it, they don't need us. It goes to staff. It's staff's now job to go find consultants to figure out a plan for it and to do public hearings, and you know what I mean? If this is really only, that's how I'm reading it, right? Unless we want to be involved also in like turning a school property into something town-owned. Like we want to take one of the school properties and turn it into a town-owned aquatic facility. Is the property reuse committee involved in that? There's no sale, but it is this position.
Yeah.
do we want to be involved in that? Do we want to have the same guardrails for public input and record keeping? That
I think
would
so.
come if it was being sold. What's the
You know
demand
what I know
on
now,
council?
I'll say yes.
And that's where I think we're gonna get into more of a territory battle with town staff than sale. I think the sale is less. So than if we kept it in-house.
This is to me, a huge transgression from the normal RFP process that communities and the state, I guess, follow. With this many people, it's too many people involved in what is confidential, has a lot of confidentiality, and it's too many people. When you review RFPs, if you've ever done that, it's work. You know, you got 6 or 7 things to read, 100 pages long, you got to read them all and be able to score them.
And you gotta read multiple of them, yeah.
Yeah. So it's work, and it's something you have to do. I mean, 2 weeks, it's not,
It's not all.
you don't have months, no, it's so. You've got to have dedicated people, and I'm used to seeing 5, maybe to 7 people in a RFP review committee, town staff, people who've maybe done it before, and some newbies. You know,
I understand what you're saying. Let me maybe just interrupt here for a second. My understanding was this committee wasn't the RFP committee, but that this committee was to make sure that the RFP process was adhering to what the TOPE committee recommended. Is that not correct?
That was my understanding too, because I thought the RFP committee was going to be more staff, trained professionals. And this committee was the oversight.
paragraph 6. Submitted proposals shall be reviewed by the approved committee. All such meeting open to the public. You know, do I read that right? All the proposals that have been submitted.
Yeah.
All the meetings are going to be open to the public.
Let's back up from the 30,000 foot level. Is that, because we're on 2 different paths. Who's doing the RFP, and is this process? Because I thought we talked about that. Our concern was that the RFP, when it went out, wasn't going to follow what the TOPE, the criteria, what the TOPE wanted the document to include.
That's how I remember it too, because I mean, the town staff, they're the trained professionals. We've got the town attorney, the skills none of us here have, or this committee wouldn't have. My understanding was the PRUC was to just be the watchdog, make sure that what the TOPE said and what the final product was one and the same. Is that what you guys all know?
The final RFP product that's going out.
Correct. Yes, sorry.
I'm diagramming this.
Okay.
Can we take a look at what when we say the RFP, understand that the part of the RFP, I think that the TOPE is interested in is a very limited section to the entire RFP. The entire RFP, as you mentioned, can be 100 pages long. There might literally be 1 page of the intent of the end product of the RFP, and that's actually the part mostly that I think the TOPE is interested in. Really, what kind of building is it going to be? What's going to be in it? What's in it for the town? Contractually, that's actually a somewhat minor part compared to the RFP, which is an enormous thing about execution.
And the RFP is all detailed in the Appendix A that was put together. So I look at that as separate. We're trying to get to the point of issuing the RFP is what I thought we were trying to do.
Okay, so I'm sorry that folks online can't see my diagram.
Yep, can't say.
We don't have the thing here.
We can take a picture of it and send it to you if you want.
Yeah,
Scan it.
could I draw it up there and then it shows up there?
Well, you can take a picture and we can upload it.
Is that how that
Draw it backwards.
Just
Can I
do
draw-
a
Just take a picture and send it to his email or his text.
picture and send it. Am I the only one here? Yeah, I'm the only one here. Yeah, just send it to me.
Just send it to him.
You send a picture and it's to his phone.
So I'll do,
And you could upload it. Is there anybody watching?
I'm gonna say, this won't help the
No.
recording. I mean, I can just walk up really close to the camera.
Or you could
Yeah, you
talk
could.
about it. It's not that complicated.
It's not that complicated.
Yeah.
So this is how I'm imagining, it, right? We start with the TOPE. The TOPE is an advisory committee. It gives its recommendation to the town council. The town council directs the property reuse committee to coordinate the RFP process. So they create a subcommittee. The subcommittee creates, administers, reviews, and scores that RFP and all of the responses. It creates the RFP, scores the responses, and it sends it back to the property reuse committee to evaluate it. Did you do a good job? Is this what we were looking for? Did we fulfill the direction of the town council? right? Because if they come back with something that the town council wasn't looking for, you don't want it to go back to the town council, you want them to start again. So that's a little check so that we're not sending garbage to the town council and just setting ourselves back. But if the PROC decide that it is acceptable to send to the town council, they give the recommendation and they turn over the recommendation, all of the supporting material, and the town council issues, they select a developer, they say, we don't like any of this, but this is how I imagine the flow, right? So we have an advisory committee, the town council directs the PROC, says, build me an aquatic facility. They take Portia, John, and Bob, you're the RFP subcommittee, you're gonna write it with the town staff, you're gonna send it out to developers, collect the responses, score them, go back to the property reuse committee and go, this is what we did, this is how it came out. And the property reuse committee sends their recommendation, the minority report, the majority report, everything to the town council for consideration. And then it's back in the town council's hands to pick a developer.
All right, so I like that. I think that's what I was thinking too. I guess my question is, and I wasn't here for the debacle of what happened a couple of years ago, but so the property reuse committee is sort of what happened with prior projects, the internal committee that reviewed all the documents.
Something
Right.
like that. Three counselors.
Yeah, 3 counselors, but that's really what we're doing. Is we're trying to, however those decisions were made, it appears from what I've heard, somewhat in a vacuum, and it wasn't. This property reuse committee is a more detailed,
It's a more broad
Involved.
spectrum of people invested. So like when I was,
So being done, sorry to interrupt you, but
No, go ahead.
done in a public meeting like this, so it's,
so before it was like they had 2 counselors, Conrad Heath and Leanne Obrey, and they were randomly selected by the mayor at the time. Even if you had any interest or experience, you just weren't selected. So they got picked and they went off toward buildings and saw things that we did not know about, and nor was it reported on the camera because it couldn't be, because of the whole, attorney privilege thing when you're going out to bid. So they would say things like, oh, we have a proposed developer possibly coming forward that's applying blank, blank, blank. We wouldn't know about it until it was at the end stage and we'd hear about it in executive session. At that point, for me as a counselor, when you have people coming saying, we elected you to do this, we elected you to, represent the people and pick good development, and you counselors, all of you, aren't doing a great job. I'm not part of that. I had no idea that the Groton Housing Authority had applied at the time, until it was after the fact they weren't selected.
Right.
right. But that's why we're here. That's why we have this.
Right.
The PROC I see as being a project manager, because again,
Right.
once this process really kicks off, you might have several subcommittees going. So not everybody on the PROC can dedicate themselves to 3 different RFPs. And you won't want them to, because, oh my God, it's that a mess of information, and it might be a conflict if the same developer is bidding on multiple projects.
Also, we want the property, it shouldn't be just the counselors or a few counselors selecting for the whole town. And then at the 11th hour, the rest of the counselors, like either you're for it or against it, that's sold by the town staff. They're doing their job. They're trying to bring in development. And then we're like, what's the Cliff Notes version? And then we're trusting that they did all the research in the backdrop. And in fact, we're finding, I must say, I was a little jaded as a counselor, not understanding what type of research our town was doing and not doing until the Mystic Oral School debacle and a few other debacles. So now we're kind of streamlining this in a way where we're trying to understand exactly what they're doing behind the scenes. Are they checking criminal records? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? It also protects the town, the taxpayers, and the council from putting your name to something that you don't know where and how it was vetted. Also, I don't know, I didn't have a stake at the beginning to say that I wanted Groton Housing Authority to have a piece of the puzzle, because I didn't even know they were on the conveyor belt there. So I just think that this is a way where the councils rotated out every 2 years. The property use committee, the councilors that are appointed there would rotate out, but hopefully the members that are part of it would be more standing. And I think when you're part of a committee like an ABC or an appointed committee, you have a little bit more longevity than a counselor in some ways, unless you keep running. Then you kind of know the history of what's going on. So I think it keeps a better set of eyes on things and allows for the dialogue and the history of discussion to be fluent and transparent as possible. As a 2-year elected counselor, we don't have enough time to dive into all of that. So we can rely on this committee to say, oh, no, this developer came 5 years ago and did this. Oh, okay, thank you. I just think it's nice, and it shouldn't be just the council making the final decision. They are, but they should have some people that are invested on that.
And I think that's what we're doing with this. So I get it. Bob, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the things that you mentioned that you didn't know till the last minute, you were forced to vote on something. This isn't criticism, because the town council didn't demand to know. Okay, you could have said in the future, you could say, we want to know more about this before we decide. Good.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, the way the structure of the council is you have to have the votes. So like, if I'm up there and I don't get the cry,
If it is the process,
right?
If we make that the process, then you would be more engaged. You would be allowing the process to move along, not inch by inch or foot by foot, by setting expectations. Okay, here's the expectations for public engagement. This is how we want to do public engagement, and that's it. Here's how we want to do include the community requirement section.
Yeah.
In the RFP. What does the community want out of this project? And make sure that it's there. Scoring criteria. What is the scoring criteria? Proving the winner. And I emailed something like this out a couple of months ago.
Yep.
And I email it again right now. If you want to take it. But this is, to me, an alternate thought of, instead of adding a Pruitt, give the town council the tools they need to do the job they need to do with RFPs. So you're not surprised. So you're setting expectations, you're creating demands, and you're following up, you're doing the oversight. Even down to the end, last step, validating the process at the end. How did we do? Lessons learned, feedback loop.
Yeah, the thing that
One
I
second,
like about
just
the.
You just want to have Hal have his hand up first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think if I'm kind of agreeing with the process we're outlining here, just because, and take away some of the fear, is if after the TOPE does its thing and the council does its thing and it's turned over to the PRUC or whatever we're going to call it, by that time, it should have funneled down into instructions, including scoring criteria for the RFP committee. No matter how small they are, they should end up with by default, end up with a product that has been vetted to death. Has not been always, all this information has been put into it. So I think that might be exactly the way to go. It limits who's dealing with the RFP, but we've already dictated what the scoring is going to be, and so where we want to go with it. We wouldn't have had the kind of surprises, and hopefully wouldn't have had this kind of surprises that we end up with the oral school. So I think then when you file it back, then the RFP come back, the RFP committee comes back and says, here's how we scored it. We don't need to see some of the contractual things, and nobody needs to see a lot of the things can remain secret. And what we need to do is, what's the end result going to be the best for the town? And did it fulfill all the things that was prescribed? I think it sounds like a lot of steps to me, but I do think it would go pretty smoothly if we kind of follow it up. I don't have a problem with requiring it, because that's the one thing that was missing before, was what do you want us to do? What's the recipe? And I think that's what we're coming up with here, and I think it's fine.
Thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, I like the idea of having an intermediary like the property reuse committee, because that's when I'm going to find out who's being chosen to write this RFP and score it. I'm going to find out, like, I would imagine that the RFP subcommittee would come back, at the next regular prep meeting and go, this is the scoring criteria we're putting in here. This is how we're weighting it. Just use the PRUC as a sounding board for their work as they go about the process. They could come back and say, hey, we only got 2 bidders on this. I don't think we can move forward until we tweak it. We should get some feedback on why did we only get 2 bidders and try again. And that's all done in the public. And like I said, I think of the PRUC more as a project manager than necessarily directing or doing all of the work itself.
Yeah, I also think that it's important that sometimes I felt, and I can only speak for myself since that's what I can do, is I didn't feel that, and it's something that town staff did wrong. There's nothing they did wrong. They're doing their thing. This is the way it's been. But what I felt for me is a disconnect in what is our mission? What is our plan? What type of RFP are you writing to throw out there? Are you looking for low income, moderate income, mixed use, mixed income? with the exception of these, TIF districts, that was the most open, obvious thing that was discussed with the community. But I feel like we did that whole assessment for 2021, and I want to see that stuff is in there. And when they're out there casting and negotiating and meeting folks in different towns that are coming in, investors, I feel like their mission and plan should be already driven and written up in a way that what the community is looking for as far as the type of development. I think this group then says, okay, well, these properties or this area, this is what we're looking for. I also feel it's very important that planning and zoning and all of them, all the other things that have a stake in this is protecting the town and citizens that are here and the land, that we should be aware of any decisions to change a zoning district in its entirety to meet the needs of an incoming development. If that's the plan, then in this type of group or committee, that would be fully discussed, fully transparent with the community, fully transparent with the neighbors, fully transparent with the council, the committee, planning and zoning, and say, the desire of the community is that they want this type of development there. And if this is what you guys want, then we're going to have to change the zoning to this. Oh, someone might say, well, we really don't want that. I didn't realize we had to change it. Or let's move forward. That's great. Now everybody's on board. Now there's no, I'm not saying it was a hidden agenda, but it feels more comfortable, more digestible. P&Z's are already getting this. They're throwing out what they thought. Everyone kind of knows in the community before that. But these type of decisions should be kind of, and this is where I have trouble where Groton really doesn't have a master plan. Like we should have a 20-year master plan of what we're trying to do with the projection of, where we're going, how we're going to meet the needs of that assessment where they look at housing, and things like that. So that's my thought. That's what I see as a positive to make sure. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't change zoning. Some of the zoning needs to be relooked at. Things that we did, look at light industrial versus industrial. We're looking at data centers. When that was zoned as industrial, nobody thought in a million years that we'd have data centers. That's something we didn't know about. And so it is important that we're relooking at things and understanding. And I think planning and zoning does a wonderful job at trying to keep up on those new and ever changing things. So I think this puts everybody around the table at the right time before it becomes full throttle. Anyway, thank you.
So, yeah, Councilor Groton brought up a lot of interesting things that kind of made my state contracting board alarm go off. If what you want to do in a community is necessarily going to change the zoning, you have to do that before you put the RFP out or disclose that in your RFP. So if we want to take Mystic Educational Center as an example, or Mystic Rural School, you want to take that as your example. If what the RFP was telling people that it wanted was dense multi-family units, residential, but that thing's zoned as a school, then obviously you are going to need a zoning change. Right. Obviously you're going to need it, and that needed to be completely outlined. Or alternatively, and a better choice would be, okay, we're deciding that we want multi-family units on this property. Let's change the zoning ahead of time to reduce that administrative burden off of our selected developer, because it's not just the Municipal Rural School issue where really good developments, or well, depends on your assessment, a development that gets through the entire process gets hung up in planning and zoning because they can't make it through even just a variance, right? I'm not trying to get you to change the whole zoning. I'm just asking for a variance waiver. Really, not Mr. Rural School in particular, but other really good developments can get hung up there, and it drags out the cost and it drags out the timeline for developers in a way that makes Groton less desirable to be developed. If you want to be proactive about developing a property, you want to change it. And I know that was done with Pleasant Valley. I don't really like that, how it was done with Pleasant Valley, but I know that Pleasant Valley went from being a school to now it is zoned by family use. And that was done right before the RFP went out. So if that's the intent or the desire, you have to do that ahead of time, because that puts all developers on an even playing field. Some developers coming in might not know that they're going to have to go through that. So they're not going to plan into their timeline, into their expenses. To the extent you want to make it as even as possible, Or if you don't want to necessarily restrict a zoning type, say that too. So there were, and then additionally, some of those things can be discussed in an open meeting. Some of them can't. I would say that the prep would probably have to go into an executive decision or a session when its RFP committee comes back and says, I have 3 developers. One wants to put a pool here, one wants to put a house here, one wants to put a coffee shop here. That way you're not kind of giving it all out to the public, but it's still being kind of mulled over. Well, what did we do to our RFP to get these kind of consideration? Does it meet the intent? So there's still probably going to be executive session, but executive session doesn't need to be abused. You really only need it for financial. You're not going to, this committee will never touch a contract. It should never be close to the contractual stage. Like you should not be getting pro formas, honestly. At this stage, it should never be a consideration. That should always be done by the town council.
Understood. Thank you, John.
I think they actually covered everything I was going to say, so I don't know if you were.
Oh, regarding the zoning,
Sorry, Jeff.
doesn't the
No, good.
process
Hey.
expose the zoning
Yeah.
issues
It does.
and suggest, or is it a mountain we can climb, or is it a mountain we can't climb?
Maybe of Hal up there too.
So
Thank you.
just Pruitt here, the zoning issues are basically well-known and a methodology to accommodate them or not.
Or not.
Right.
And that's something that maybe the town council can speak to when the TOP goes, hey, here's our report. If you want to do this, we hear it, we think this is a good idea, you're gonna have to get planning to move on it before we put out an RFP. Like, we're not gonna do this as developers until you overcome this hurdle.
Good. Hal?
Yeah, maybe, I think you're already hitting on it. Maybe the only thing we might need to say is that any zoning change, which is one of the things we were supposed to, the TOP was supposed to evaluate what it would take to do a zoning change or what that would hurt. If there's going to be a zoning change, then it should be resolved prior to the RFP, which might not be that tough, but just in terms of, but it might be what you need to do. I don't know if we want to go any farther than that. You just mentioned, it's changed from a school to a residential. Schools are zoned in residential areas. It's actually kind of the way that worked. Where the oral school is a residential area. It's just a very low, extremely low density residential area. So that's actually zoned appropriately to put in apartments where a school is. It's the same zone. So we're not too far off on some of those things. It's just a surprise of the change of use. And the change of use you can still do. So it might not take a zone change necessarily. But the oral school was a really weird one that they tried to concurrently go for a zone change while they're trying to put out the RFP. And maybe that's the only thing we need to preclude. To say,
Just a follow-up question. Should the potential for a zone change be like in number 8 of the original TOP, that if a zone change is needed or should be considered, that we should, that has to happen? Should that come before? Should that be part of the TOP process, I guess is my question.
Well,
I mean, it'd be a recommendation.
because also I think Hal, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you're done.
Well, actually, let me just address what that was, because talking about the zone change, we did have an item that kind of disappeared, I think. I'm looking at my list in the previous one, where, potential effect on neighboring parcels, market value, potential expansion of existing developments or adjacent parcels, if zoning or wetland or economic classifications were changed. So at one point we had been evaluating what if a zone change, what the effect would have on it, and that's the time to do it. It doesn't say to accomplish it necessarily, but it does say to evaluate it.
Was that in A? I'm sorry, 8?
That was in.
Where was that previously?
Let's see where that was. It was, I don't know if it ever got on there, but it was I've got my kind of where I kind of switched things
Maybe
out from
4?
questions. So it was at number 4 after meetings. When evaluating the properties, the committee shall seek input and consider the following questions. And that's where it was.
Yeah. It looks like several of those questions kind of addresses, is the property suitable for this, that, or the other? We could be more explicit and say, will the recommended use require a zoning change or variance?
Does it meet current zoning?
Right.
Does it need it?
And that should be part of the checklist of things when someone's looking at the preferred developer. You know, if you have, you know, if there's a huge zoning change, that should be defined in that process when you're scoring, not scoring, but vetting, I guess. Also, you know, one of the other things that the criticisms from the community was protecting us from legal problems. And I think I agree with Hal in the sense that if the zoning, we shouldn't be running those at the same time. You know, it's like getting married and getting a divorce in the same day, I guess, if you want to. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. You need to close out one before establishing another. And I think that really opens us up for legal problems, because if we don't fulfill the zone change, and we have no power on planning and zoning in their decision as a council or really as a community. They are independent, and they're supposed to be looking out. They're the watchdog of the properties, and they do a great job vetting. So to work with a developer that's like, oh yes, we're going to go through the process of the zone change. If that was to happen again, we need to make sure that that wording in our document is strong and has the protections in place to get out, and that the developer knows that if planning and zoning does not pass this, it's a no-go. But do we want to take on a project like that when we might have had 3 other developers like Groton Housing Authority and several others that were high scoring, that wasn't going to need as much of a change, and wait for a whole process, invest all the attorney time and money to move down in this path, and to find out in the end that in fact it's not going to work. Now you're leaving this developer hanging, and now we're back at square one. So I do really think that this part was one of the bigger problems for me, for the community, and we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves on the front end, and that we have the protections put in there that are going to make sure that we have full out ability. But good practice would be to not promise things that are not already been enacted on.
And if I may, I think that's what a well-worded 4 does, because it's part of the evaluation, right? So I think if it came in and just to use the oral schools as an example, and it was in this process, it's going to require this massive zoning change, and our planning and zoning representative on the TOP goes, it's a no-go. Well, that'll make it into the majority minority report saying planning and zoning's already kind of said that's not gonna, it's a deal killer. So it's important, yes, and I say it's got to be there, but I think 4, especially we kind of make sure that's really defined. We'll take care of that before we ever get there.
So you'll incorporate some changes on 4?
Yeah, on 4, I added does the recommended use conform to current zoning? If not, what is the recommended change?
Right.
Any?
Yeah. I think that's great.
What is planning and zoning's input on that change?
Well, they would be part of writing.
Right.
the report.
And grant they would not be able to make, like the liaison can't make a recommendation for the whole planning and zoning, but they'll be able to speak to, here's the process, and it's not, it wouldn't look good because of this. But the council then, as its own governing body, could still trump all that and still go down this and roll with it. But at least we have P&Z around the table, inland and wetland and other stakeholders here who are saying it would be advisable, but I don't know how they're going to vote, but here's the loophole. So I just think it's great. I think the more discussion we can have up front, the better.
Okay, Hal, your hand is up.
Oh, no,
You have something else?
No, we can put it down.
All right, so let's get back to page 7.
Okay, so I've been doing some edits, to kind of taking in the feedback and where I think we want to go with this. Assuming that people understood with my little flow chart. So 1, if the final decision is fine. 2, the town council directs the property reuse committee to manage the RFP process to fulfill the disposition direction of the town council. The property reuse committee shall consist of, or will be chaired by a counselor and will consist of 2 additional counselors, 3 representatives of the RTM, up to 3 town staff to conform with previous standards on the TOP, as determined by the town manager, and may include 1 representative of the 5. And that makes it more of an ad hoc situation we have here, where if committees want to send a liaison, they can, but it doesn't strain the committee to have them and then have issues with like forums or getting bodies on it, et cetera, et cetera.
Why would any of the committees be on this? There might be a conflict of interest right there. If, you know,
Yeah, especially with
You know,
EDC.
if I'm submitting a.
Those commissioners are, a lot of them are developers themselves.
Can we project the notes, because
Well, then
They've done their job. You can think of it that way.
I'm a little confused too. Who's,
Yeah,
Are we all in agreement that the purpose of this page is to ensure the TOP information? The RFP is following the TOP report? I feel like we're kind of,
It's your surplus.
so, the TOP, it doesn't need to follow the TOP report because the town council might look at the TOP report and go, nah, do this instead.
I have a comment and then a question. So can we share the document? Can you share it on your screen for
He would have to,
just the interest of transparency for the
Yeah.
public?
this is easier to follow?
yeah, understood.
Secondly, where I'm confused, it says, so the PRUC is going to be created via personnel and appointments, but then the 5 relevant town committees, it's going to be ad hoc. So who's?
Hold on, go, there you go.
I can't,
You're good.
Can't be a pilot then.
There's a lot of reasons I can't be.
Me too.
My eyesight's really not at top of that.
Yeah, line me in.
It's okay. Yeah, so then my question says, we're going to create the PRUC during personnel and appointments.
No, you demoted me.
Oh,
instead of-
one-
Oh, you got demoted.
Oh,
Promote me to panelist and then promote me to, oh, now I've got to, okay, stay muted, I'm gonna panelist. And once I'm a panelist, then you can promote me to co-host.
well, you're just getting promoted right the chain, aren't you?
Demoted to the.
Co-host.
Right here?
Yeah.
okay, so go for it.
So that my question is, it says via personnel and appointments. But then who is personnel and appointments appointing? Because the town council will be sent by the mayor, right? The RTM will be sent by the moderator. The town manager is going to send the town staff, and the chairs of the 5 relevant committees will come, or the 5 relevant committee people come from their chairs.
Mm.
And the 3 residents aren't going to, well, I guess maybe the 3 residents.
Residents could be appointed by personnel, but
Right, so
I don't think that they need, the town council will pick 3 residents.
okay,
So with what I recommended, which isn't the general wording, because this is the original wording. I hear your points. What I would say is, if I'm recommending that this is a middle manager, I don't know necessarily if I think it's appropriate for 3 residents to be on there, because again, there could be multiple RFPs going on.
right. And I don't think personnel and appointments needs to be involved because everybody else is being selected by the mayor, the moderator, or their chairs.
You could have 3 residents or some of those who are RFP savvy. Okay, they're in the community, we know who they are, they might come in and volunteer.
And residents.
Yeah, they don't have to live in the neighborhood, they don't, but they're RFP savvy, they've done this perhaps all their, half their life, their professional lives. They're good at it.
You would think that the desire for folks in the area of the development would be satisfied by representatives of the RTM. Like we can constrain that like we've done previously instead, like, but do that on the RFP subcommittee side, right? One of those, like if it's a 3-member subcommittee, one of those needs to be
I could go with one neighbor,
one neighbor. Yeah.
representing.
But then I think the chair of the PRUC can pick that neighbor. I don't think personnel appointments need to be involved because it's
Exactly.
not a personnel appointments.
The PRUC could be the one.
Right.
And what I like, so here's what I like about making the PRUC kind of the project manager of all these RFPs, is that it allows it to open it up to a lot of people. So I know with doing like financial stuff, you always want to have a change of hands looking at the books and handling things so that nobody's running it in a way that maybe they shouldn't for years and years and years and never get caught. You always want to have someone else kind of checking your work. And I feel like having the project manager kind of in the middle of that, they're appointing people to that RFP subcommittee. So maybe we're getting a wider array of diversity of background and knowledge and experience and like people just in general, right? also, because we have this intermediary now, we're talking about it. We're having a vote on it. Hey, I want to appoint John to write the RFP for knowing. Anyone have a problem with that? It's on the agenda. We're gonna have a public meeting. We're gonna have citizens comment. Come tell me why you don't want John writing this RFP.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say too. That's what I like about us, or this being the intermediary. I'm the counselor. If you've gotten calls from constituents when either for or against on something you voted on. RTM, I'm sure you haven't. HDC, I have. So you now we're in the public view, or this group's in the public view, and I can say, hey, I like this project because, you know, as a kid, or right, it calls me, what are you thinking? That doesn't make any sense. It wasn't a good reason to vote.
Right.
There's an accountability, and it gives the residents an ability to contact somebody where if town staff, for example, in the RFP, maybe they can't call town staff, or they can't call the town attorney. That's the intermediary that gives the residents that comfort.
And someone can come out and say, I don't really think that person's appropriate for it because they work with that. Like they work with one of the prospective developers or likely developers.
Or their neighbors with them, or
they previously put a bid on this, and now we're not sure, you know, how that's going to influence it. Yeah, I really think the intermediary step is important.
I take some issue with describing the Crook as a project manager, okay, on this, because let's face it, the town council does, I mean, the town staff does the heavy thing. Right, they're gonna do the typing, they do the record, they're gonna create the RFP. I would see this group, that the value they would provide is in oversight, making sure the rules are being followed. Yeah, well, project manager to me is more directing. Okay, and they may do some of that, but I'm more interested in the oversight role.
Sure.
You know, are we meeting the citizens' requirements? You know,
the town council's requirements.
Yeah, town council.
Right, the work for the town council.
Yeah. All these tricky issues. Are we doing the best thing we can do?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
Same thing, different words. I like your words. Oversight.
Yeah.
Might work better.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Oversight.
Because it needs to be
right?
done.
Right.
It absolutely needs to be done. Yeah.
And then so. I know we're devolving a little bit from the actual text, but I think it's important to have our concept and then we can put it to work. So if we're saying this is the prop would be the oversight. They would create smaller subcommittees to handle the RFPs. What would we want those RFP subcommittees to look like? Or we can handle that in the appendix B. Because my next point was the prop will create a RFP subcommittee using as directed by the appendix A. And I think there had been discussion about maybe not putting what I took from the state and kind of doctored up, putting that in front of the town council first. Just kind of keeping it simple and then saying the prop will go forward and make that RFP policy so that we don't have to go through.
Can you explain more of the RFP subcommittee? Because this is a new concept, I think.
Right, so we're the prop, ready?
Yep, I got it.
Town council says, I want you to turn Pleasant Valley into an aquatic facility. And we say, cool. We need John, someone from RTM District 4, and John Reiner to make us an RFP. And they're going to go do that work and they're going to report to us on their work. But that way, not necessarily all of us are tied up because, hey, oh my God, Mary Morrison's on the market now. We want Mary Morrison to be turned into housing.
But
so
is
now
that taking
Dave's
place?
gonna do it, Bob's going to do it, and Paige Bronk's going to go make the RFP.
Yeah, I'm used to an RFP review committee.
That's the same thing.
Right, okay, that's what we've had time immemorial.
My issue is like, I know Pleasant Valley went up for RFP, but even as I was sitting on the RTM, I didn't even know that one, there's an RFP being put up, or two, that a RTM member was sitting on that committee because he was never made to report to the RTM. And if we had this oversight board, there would at least be the need for, I know who's on that subcommittee working it, and they're making regular reports on what's happening.
And what their responsibilities are to report back to you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And again, just going historically, only for the sake of example, not one through the other, I think that's what the community felt had heartburn on the Mystic Oral School and the data centers. They felt they weren't aware of it until, I mean, it was about ready to. Exactly.
That's how things are going. And that's my personal, I'll speak to it. My personal heartburn is we get a presentation, this beautiful presentation. The first time I know about it is when it's getting presented to the town council and we're told, do you like this or do you love it?
Yeah.
And there is no other option.
Right.
And I have no clue how we got to this point to begin.
Well, and again, using one of those old projects, I'm not gonna get into specifics, but one of those projects and one of the people that was for it, you know, the comment was made way after, well, I like because they did it in Austin. And I'm thinking, you know, Austin, Texas and Groton are like worlds apart, where had that come up earlier on, you can understand the thought process and adjust and contact and.
And let's not rehash everything. Let's try to solve issues here.
Well, so that's why I was trying to keep a little.
And this is how we see it.
Yeah.
This is an oversight. I don't see town staff on it then. They don't oversight themselves.
They don't oversight themselves. That is true,
Right.
but they need to be involved at least with the RFP, because if we dive in, I know I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but the requirement of that RFP policy is to have a neutral town staff party taking in the bid and holding on to them for neutrality and control.
So I guess one town staff as the latest on.
And they shouldn't be part of the RFP subcommittee. They should be a disinterested party.
But getting back, I agree with Bob. If the PRUC is an oversight committee,
Why do we need town staff?
that's kind of like letting the inmate run the asylum at that
It
point,
could be
right?
ex officio, if we want. I'm sure that I'm assuming that the town council would want input from staff, or the town manager would want to know where you're going with these RFPs that you're going to be asking his staff to help you write and administer.
What's your feeling?
So, I mean, town manager could be ex officio or his designee.
I think we all work better as a team if we involve everyone, in my personal opinion. If, you know, that's, I think, what we need to do. I just don't know how we're gonna get there, but that's.
Can I make the recommendation that we say town manager or his designee is an ex officio of this? Does that work? Of the oversight board.
Yeah, as the town representative.
Yeah.
Staff, yeah.
Staff representative. So I mean, if Bert doesn't want to do it, he can ask John to do it, he can ask Paige to do it,
Yes.
whoever he feels most appropriate to be helping with the oversight of the RFP.
I mean, because I'll be honest, I'm sort of in the middle. Part of me says you can't let the inmate run the asylum, right? The other part of me, I see David's point. If they feel they're not part of the process, then they're going to feel left out. And it's, so how do we walk that fine line?
They are doing work.
They are.
Because when a developer sends in their proposal, they're not gonna wanna send it to Dave on the Rock. They're gonna wanna send it to the town of Groton. And
They're
not only
already
going to-
triaging, they're doing the work.
They're doing the work. That bid box out there, they're gonna walk in and drop it in their bid box. Who's controlling the bid box? Who's got?
And us.
It wouldn't make sense to not include town staff,
Right.
because they're doing the work, and ultimately they do have a lot of that expertise on how to guide a developer through the process.
So maybe it's more, and for me, just format that, the way that we're talking or the way this is going makes it sound like we're X-ing town staff.
No.
And I maybe that's just the way I'm feeling. So I don't know how we make the RFP process as important. I mean, right here, it's the town will create the RFP process, which will consider all information. I mean, that needs to be highlighted as a large piece of it, I think.
I agree that there should be some involvement, but again, we got here because community felt that they were being excluded, you know, and development and stuff. So the control was on the other side for quite some time.
No, and I'm not saying
I
that.
agree that we need to, I mean, again, they're gonna do what they want with this. My goal is to send the best piece of paper forward. And what they choose to do with it or how they feel. I mean, we can't change their feelings, but I do think that there should be a designee of some sort that, you know, but they have their hands all in it at the beginning. I mean, they're the one triaging all this. This is their full-time job. We're all non-paid volunteers. So they have a stake in it.
I think it's just how this is flowing. I'm not enjoying as much as I would like to.
I think it's a lot of moving parts that are all new. So there's a lot of friction we're feeling. And it's just about coming up with the right words and concept to make it feel better. All right, so I'm editing live here. It's to illustrate what I think I said, because what I said wasn't to take out town staff, but to lessen the strain on them. Because again, we want to be certain that we want their involvement, but we don't want to have be over demanding on their time or their, right? We don't want to create conflict. We also don't want to overcommit them to work. So the town council will direct the property reuse committee to oversee and manage the RFP process to fulfill the disposition provision as dictated by the town council. The property reuse committee shall consist of 3 town councilors as appointed by the mayor. Shall be chaired by 1 town councilor. And I'm gonna say this. As appointed by the mayor. As well as an additional 2 councilors. Right, so that's your 3, and that's what makes it an official kind of subcommittee of the town council. That your 3.
Are we gonna have minority representation or no?
Minority representation if available, because available.
Is minority representation
Political
required?
minority representation.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I mean, think about 2017, that was 9 Democratic town councilors, so this wouldn't have been a possible requirement to fill.
Right, if possible, or
Because Groton is one of 2-3 towns that isn't mandated to have minority representation on its active report. Anyways, it's just a funny state statute. 2 or 3 representatives from the RTM as selected by the moderator with minority representation. And up to, do we want to do up to 3 town staff as selected by the town manager, or do we want to say the town manager or his designee, their designee?
Well, I would say it's designated. If they want to bring more to the table, who cares?
Yep.
As-
And the town
as,
manager.
Ex officio, whatever, you know.
Or their designee as an ex officio member. And we're saying we don't want the liaisons from the ABCs, or we do want the liaisons from the ABCs.
I think we do.
I think
Do
we
we think
do.
they've done their work already, or do we think they have more value to add?
I think,
Here's- they can still participate in the subcommittees.
so I think since we're using this as a.
That's how.
Well, let me speak, I'll speak when the ABCs don't let how. I mean, I think if it's an oversight committee, then the ABC still wants that oversight on their thing, they oversight.
We could say other members, as, you know, voted on by the committee. Say ad hoc members as voted on by committee,
As needed.
as needed.
How, what's your thoughts?
You know, I kind of waver on how much we're going to get involved. We already issued a report. The
Right.
report is public. So it's already out there. And now we
Right.
put together a group of people who are elected, mostly who are elected, and their staff. At what point do we trust them that they've got to go by what was reported?
Yeah.
That's true.
So
And
it's
I would think
already,
that-
yeah, we're already kind of, we can vet that, we can, you know, keep oversighting to death, but maybe we don't need to. Maybe this is, we're at a point where it's enough. We've already put this all out there. Everybody's gotten to see it. And
It's in their hands now. I mean,
That's
the
it.
recommendations are made.
that's right. The recommendations are made. It's at their peril if they go against them. So
I'm sorry, what did you say,
I
Bob?
want people who can perform the oversight function, and will do it vigorously.
Yeah.
I don't care where they come from. No.
So
You know what I mean?
my 2 thoughts are, I'd be weary to put up any liaisons from ABCs, because any given, any given project might come before the planning and zoning. I'm pretty sure pretty much all projects are gonna
They
have
all
to
will.
end up in front of planning and zoning.
Yep.
So it wouldn't make sense to have them be part of this board, because then they'll have to recuse themselves when eventually they need to vote on it as a member of the planning and zoning.
Yeah.
Same thing with wetlands, you'd have that conflict of interest. if they-
HDC.
Same thing with HTC. I agree with Bob. I think we can kind of snap the line here. We could put something that says other ad hoc members may be added at the leisure of the prop or the town council.
To facilitate the oversight function.
Right, like, because I'll say, like, I'm very familiar with RFP processes and that kind of thing. If I wanted to come in and be involved, I'd be a little bit slighted if I wasn't on the RTM and couldn't be involved that way. I'd be a little bit like, I'd like to play, put me in coach, but you know, kind of like I did here. I just started showing up, and so you guys got so annoyed with me. You're like, ah, fine, you might as well do work.
No, she saw right through our motivation.
So that's my thought. We could add that if the town council wants to line it out, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah, I think we go as,
flexibility.
I would agree, we go as Hal recommended, Bob recommended, and council can change if they deem appropriate.
Oh, yeah, always good.
Huh?
I think that this also might make it more palatable to the town council and the RTM
One of
to
their
get the
complaints was
tope
that
out, to get
we're-
all of us out of their hair at some point. And this will be the point.
Thanks, Hal. We just said we have a citizen, I guess, or?
Actually, he's on the.
Yeah, I'm in chair with HTC.
Okay, thank you.
This is Eric Goodman. We spoke about him last
Yeah,
meeting.
my name,
Yep.
Yeah.
At least when we talk about people, we'll do it in public.
Yeah, I think some of you know me and some of you don't, so just quick background. My family moved here in '87 when I was 2, so I've lived my entire life in Mystic, either on the Stonington or the Groton side. I stayed here until 2009. I graduated from Eastern with a degree in sociology and economics, and then I went to Boston, moved up there for 10 years, went to law school, got a law degree in business planning and tax, worked in finance, did some stints as chief operating officer for turnarounds. And then in 2018, I linked up with my partner, Cody Blake, and I moved back to Mystic and started K Blake and Company with him, mainly as a construction company. My plan was to help him get it off the ground, and it got off the ground a lot quicker than we kind of thought. So after doing some projects, we built Sift out for Adam Young, and then we then jumped into the development side and built the standard, developed it and built the standard in downtown Mystic. And then we did the Norton and Niantic, which was just wrapped up. And we've got 2 other projects that are currently approved farther away from here, but we'll be doing more projects like that. So long story. But after the last HTC meeting, John and Councilor Bordelon and I were discussing this, and I said I'd take a look at it just from a developer's point of view, not from an HTC point of view at all, with just some comments, because I see these a lot. And for full disclosure, when this process does go through, there are projects that I'd love to do here. So first off, I'd like to say, I think you're doing a great job. I think this is a great document so far. I printed out the one that was online from last time. I don't think there's anything in here that's overly restrictive. I kind of thought I was going to come at this from a developer and rip it apart, and I didn't. I have more just some wordsmithing and a few suggestions, and not even that many. And I know you may have touched on them, but I'm just going to go back.
Yeah, because I didn't want to speak for you, and I think I was off on a few of them. So
yeah. So I'm just going to run through this, which was online, and I'll just tell you the section I was talking about and what I saw. If you have any questions or want me to clarify things, just let me know. In your goals section on the first page, your last comment 7 said to seek to divest from real property with little to no use to the town. I think it's a little bit confusing, and I would delete it because it leads the question of if it's not useful now and then it's useful later potentially. Is there some question about?
Could you talk a little louder? I'm sorry.
Sure. Just some question about should you have gotten rid of it or not? You're also kind of restating what you're already getting rid of a property that doesn't have any value to the town. Otherwise, you'd be keeping it. So I would just get rid of it altogether. If it was me, I think it's a little bit ambiguous and a little confusing. But again, that's just my opinion. When you jump down in that page, and this relates more to the process, I had said to John that I think, you have this great committee that can be formed to do whatever you decide to do, but I would create a threshold of where you don't need to engage that large of a committee. So if there's a property that's 100 square feet because it was a piece of a, I don't know, a small subdivision or something, or there's something that's valued at $10,000, where it's really not that big of a deal.
It's a charter. The $10,000 is a charter thing where it has to go through the RTM to be approved for sale.
Sure. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
That it doesn't.
what I'm saying is that don't even say it's 100,000 or 50,000, you may not need to convene this large of a committee to do away with something that's over 10, but less than 30 or whatever. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, I thought we need a quick checkout lane,
Yeah,
so to speak.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like if it's not major, why put it through this entire process?
I like that.
Actually, didn't we talk about that last time?
We talked about this quite a bit last
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think we decided that for little pieces, we will have little 100-square-foot pieces, and the whole group will get together and knock it out in 5 minutes. And it's kind of a worthwhile thing to do, no matter how minor, because just a little piece of bordering property that someone wants to adopt into their own lot might have odd repercussions, and the large group will knock that out in no time. If there's nothing, we'll be done with it in 5 minutes. If there is something, that's the time to find it out. We wouldn't be convening the entire group just for that one little project. We might be having 10 such little shards of properties. So I think we had decided, it'd be great if we didn't need to, but it's probably beneficial just to get the group together.
That's, and remember the onus or the impetus, I should say, the impetus of this group was wanting a lot more community involvement and oversight. And it's hard, like, depending on where that shard is, that could have a lot of impact on how the community is using a particular area.
Sure, I don't disagree, and it's up to you.
It's tricky, and I think that it's something that the TOP might want to address later once it's up and running, but for our purposes now.
I would just consider the fact that anyone can petition for anything, and then you have to go through this entire process. So you may be inundated with petitions for small pieces of property that could be disposed of without this entire process. That's my only comment. So you get just.
So I'll ask you, what happens to those small shards now? Do you know?
No, I have no idea.
I have no idea either. And that's kind of my concern is, are these being bought and sold and developed with nobody knowing what's going on with them?
Small ones.
A small one.
Very small ones,
Typically, nothing happens.
because
Nobody wants it. It's more trouble, the legal issues and all that.
Well, hang on.
Who wants to take on taxable property?
Non-profit.
You've got town-owned property in your backyard that nobody.
Why would you want it?
But some.
Hold on. And I know this for a fact, and I will get to even a town that neighbors Groton, not Groton. You can go to the select person and say, hey, there's this little old whatever horse path town owns next to mine. I'd like to incorporate it into my lot. He goes to the head, he or she goes to the, I forget who. And if they agree it's not worth that much, they'll sell it to you for $1. You get it. So other towns do it differently. So don't.
We've sold off. So since I've been on, there was a piece up against the New Ink school. The
Town council
approved it, and
less than 10 grand, right?
and I believe it was, and it was a small parcel of land that butted up against another property, just a basic citizen property.
Didn't go through this process.
Did not go through this process, and I don't think it, in a sense, that person had first right of no, because they were nervous as to what that land was going to become. So they wanted to add that sliver as a buffer. So they proactively saw, okay, town's not sure what they're going to do with the old knowing school up on the hill, which is a beautiful property. There was talk of, do we keep it a garden, houses in there? And they moved right in and said, I don't know the dimensions, but they wanted that sliver of land. And for me, maybe I would want that sliver of land making my own park. I'd love to sit up there, you know? I would have loved to buy it for the price it was. But the point is that if just because their neighbor takes an interest, should it go up online somewhere for 30 days? Because everyone should have full and equal access. Some people criticize that they didn't know that that person was going to buy that. So there is some controversy that it is top by.
So here's what I'd say is, if that person wanted to come directly to the TOP committee and ask about it, yeah, I'd kick off the process. If they went straight to the town council can decide whether or not to forward that on. And it might be the TOP committee looks at them and goes, hey, go ask the town council. Because we're a little bit busy. Go ask the town council and then come back to us if they tell you to come back.
I think there should be a process for that small piece of land, is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. I'm
like a 30-day notice or something that it's up for sale.
I'm not saying no, I'm just saying not right now. Because
Yeah.
Just hear me out. Like, we're fighting for our lives here to get something out by, what is it, the 23rd?
Yeah.
And something powerful. And I think you start complicating it with thresholds and considerations. we're gonna lose in the weeds.
I do think his suggestions is, again,
Very
I see these documents as ever turning.
Mm.
And even what we put through is gonna be a first read, there could be modifications. Someone on the council actually might like your idea.
Mm.
So I just think that we should take whatever we don't agree with today, we take it and add it as a minority report or as a report
Yes.
in our thing, because my thing is this, in 20 years after I'm no longer doing this, 30 years, something else that someone else says that I might have said or you say that's not relevant now
Yeah.
is maybe relevant and say, wait, he was on the right side. You know, and so I do think it's important to add it. So can we at least agree to add any and all comments?
Yes, I think that's part of our report to
Yeah.
town council should be, we got this citizen feedback and.
Here it is, and we'll add it in.
Just to be 100% clear, though, I'm not advocating for no restrictions. I'm just saying fast checkout lane.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also just want to counter that and say I do want to just say one thing. I think there needs to be some oversight for everything, though, because there are situations where someone could acquire this 100 square feet and suddenly their property is subdividable into 3 lots. So they pick it up for nothing, and then now they've got this huge economic advantage to it. Now, that may be great because now you've created 3 taxable lots, building the grand list, more housing, whatever. But you just got to make sure don't just give it away, but make sure if it's small enough, maybe it just means there's a different process. So anyways, that's that. On the second page, yeah, section 4. I just had one wordsmithing comment. You said, could a sale of the property potentially generate significant economic development? I just delete the word significant and call it economic development, because it's just subjective. And
yeah,
it may raise more questions that aren't necessary.
That shouldn't always be the goal of a disposition.
Yeah, I mean, you want an economic benefit, period.
Most of the
What's significant?
What is it? though?
and what it means significant now, again, in 10 years, what does that word mean to
Yeah.
a different body?
Well, and think, does it mean taxable or, for instance, is it jobs tax roll? Is it value to the neighborhood?
Is it low income housing? Is it,
Yeah, what is
Yeah.
it?
what is
Yeah.
it? Good point.
Section G2, is there any known or suspected historic significance to the property? So I think that's great, but that's the only point you make of that entire thing in this whole document that I saw, at least. So it just kind of goes unanswered, because it's like, well, is there historic significance? And then what? Are you not going to get rid of it because you want, like, are you advocating that if there's historic significance, you follow a different process, you keep it? Are you trying to keep the historic piece? Do you require the developer to do something different? It's just sort of what happens.
Be mitigated.
Yeah.
Or address, discuss.
So I think that maybe should be added where we added, if I may, or possibly considered to be added where we added, is there a zoning change?
But it's in the same section. right?
It-
So my point would be, we could wordsmith it to say address or discuss, but also remember that when we get into section 8 of where the report is, there's discussion of each item in section 4. So that would include the historical significance, discuss this historical significance.
But what are we doing if there is? I guess it's not defined anywhere.
That would be part of your recommendation, right? Like, this thing is a 100-year-old tavern. We acknowledge it, we don't care. So we still recommend to demolish and dispose of this way.
Right.
That would be interesting,
Well,
right?
we're using the oral school where there's probably significant Native American up there now, that's getting the Pequot tribe involved, possibly, if they want to be, right?
If it was me and you had more time, I would just find some way to tweak it to maybe just to get at what you're trying to say.
We could say, how is any known or suspected historical significance going to be addressed?
I think that tends to just be touch and base.
Yeah.
You know, touch the historical significant base.
And I think it should be, and if we did decide to wordsmith it more, I think it should also state land or building. So, okay, for example, you have the old Mother Bailey house that's someone wanted to buy or tear down. Well, what's the historical significance of the land and the building? So would you, from the historic district side, you know, do you think that we should be asking the historical significance of the land as well if there's a structure?
I think it's a good comment. I guess my only thing would, I think you're saying it, whether you say that or you don't say it, because if the property's empty, what's the historic significance of the empty property? If the property is a building, there's some historic significance of the land and the building.
Gotcha.
The building would have been important.
Yeah.
But I think adding it doesn't do any harm.
I think the word.
Sometimes for me, there might not be a historic significance in the sense of like, you know, no president went through there, no battlefield, no native indigenous folks, but maybe like that art of that structure is the last structure known in New England.
Yeah.
And that we might not know that because, oh, wow, those wood plankings on the front and that porch and that style building is the last that hasn't burned down. That would be great to know, is.
So we talked about the Octagon House at the last HDC, so I researched that there's 28 of them nationwide.
And we have one here in Mystic.
One
Yeah.
happens to be here in Mystic, right? It's a private house, but let's say that became town owned, how do you deal with that?
Or someone said, we want to put an apartment building. I mean, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but like, we should know that that has a meaning.
But that would be encompassed in the word
Yeah.
property is my point.
Okay, that's good.
Hal, do you have something?
Okay, and yeah, and just a good point about the item like historic significance is that that was one problem I had with having all that list as questions. I keep trying to make it into statements. Is that
Yeah.
but by saying does it have historical significance? The answer is yes, and then you move to the next one. There's all those. As soon as you ask the question, they become yes or no questions without a
Right.
discussion of the ramifications of it. So I completely agree. Is why I'll send you again, or I think you might, Laura, already have it. My kind of rewrite to say we're going to address these ideas like suitable for housing, not yes or no. It is suitable for housing, but must address
Gotta reform it.
suitability for housing and historic significance. To your point about the land, we actually have one, which was where we put that little bicycle pump track. Were you guys even aware of the bicycle pump track we're putting in? No, I didn't know what a pump track was either. But down near the railroad tracks, it's Depot Road, they're putting in where we had a little park, a little track, and they wanted to put in, it's for off-road biking for kids. It's a great little project the town's going to do somehow. And there's an empty pad there. There's just land with a concrete pad. It just looks like nothing. They're going to put a Connex box there for their equipment. Happened to be a case where I happened to have gone on a tour and knew that that was actually where the last train station in Groton was 100 years ago.
Oh, boy.
Historically, it's significant. You don't want to sit a Connex box on top of it. You want to put a plaque there. So if the town ever turns that over, and I bet they would love to turn it over, that would be one of those things saying, hey, this has some significance, and it's just a little 200 square foot plot of land.
Bob, did you have your hand up?
Are we going past 7?
I don't have much more.
No, well, listen for us. It's 7 before.
I'm good to keep going.
I'm good.
I'm okay.
Go to 8.
I do have to leave at 7, so I'm gonna wait for Eric to finish, and I do have to go.
I've probably got
You got 5 minutes.
I'm good.
less than that. Okay, so getting back to the disposition of town-owned property process, this is like the last 2 pages. Again, I just said about a lower threshold for the full PRUC, but you can take that. And then the only thing I thought about was, and we were discussing this, is relative to 8. So when the town council considers this submitted proposals, when you're already at that point, I think you should favor a local developer or a developer in state or a developer with ties to the area or something.
Or teaming with a local developer.
Something.
Like subcontract.
Yeah, and obviously that benefits me, but also when you have local developers or local construction companies, there's 2 benefits. One is they care about it. And if they make a mistake or there's a problem, they're accessible, they'll deal with it for the most part, I'd hope. And they have a vested stake in making sure that it was done well. Secondly, the economic benefit to a local company, like when we do a project, when we did the standard and it was whatever, $9 million in construction, that $9 million all went to construction companies, subcontractors that were within 20 minutes of here, 30 minutes a year. So
Like a 7-to-1 return on local investment.
it's huge. Yeah. And I know because like I know that No Ink Electric sponsors the baseball team. I know that we sponsor the Stony High School football team. I don't know. It all goes back to the community. So I would just consider that as an aspect of it.
I would agree with that. I just question, is this where it goes or would it go in the RP process?
It would go on the-
That's a town purchasing policy.
I think that you're right, actually, that's a town.
Purchasing policy, they may have the local aspect.
Preference.
But it makes sense.
How would you define local? I mean, are we talking
Yeah.
Groton, southeastern Connecticut, within 20 minutes from here? Because
Well, the county.
I think,
Someone from Westlake?
I
I
think you,
think all that could be as part of scoring. That'd be a high weighted scoring.
Yeah, be the RP.
I think you could incorporate into this and just say that we would prefer local and just leave it at that. Because it doesn't, that's an ambiguous enough statement that's going to just make people think that like, yeah, we want to try to keep the business here as much as possible. Because it does just drive me nuts when I see these, well, we created $100 million of economic development through construction or whatever, and the
So-
company's out of
So in
spring.
scoring the RFPs, local would have,
But would that go here?
and I don't know what it would be.
Well,
You
that's,
might go in appendix A with the weighted.
well, yeah, I mean, and I think again, like it's that, does it have historical, value? Does it, is the developer local? Is it, all those questions? Is it, does it need a zoning change? Like, these are all,
The TOP's not gonna see the developers, right?
yeah.
What are the other benefits that accrue to the community if we went local? As you just talked
Yeah.
about. Right, okay, what are the other benefits that accrue?
I don't think that's a good question.
I have one left, so why don't you just think about it and then you guys deal with it.
The items that goes on the council to consider.
I think it's
I
great.
can just tell you, I think it's a huge plus if you can get that. Anyways, the last part is, and I know you made mention this last time because you said something about it, but in section 13 on the last page, it says nothing, this policy will prevent the town council from utilizing alternative sale methods such as by auction. And I think you had brought up, that's for like tax sales and things.
It doesn't need to go there.
I would just get rid of it because there's just ways to game that someone can use that later on to just say, I would just auction it off.
I think that's a legacy from the previous policy, and we've already discussed that it's not appropriate for this, because if it goes through the tax auction process, like a foreclosure process, then it's completely,
Has its own.
it has nothing to do with,
Right.
it's not town owned.
Right, but also I just think of it as if you're trying to get rid of the town property and then the town council just decides out of nowhere, we're going to auction it off to the highest bidder. You're going to get whoever the heck wants to pay the most for it. And that may be not who you want.
So we've already lined that out in other sections of the document. So it's just, we haven't gotten to our revisions of this part of the document.
Sure.
The town does auction off assets though, from time to time.
Under
Snowplows,
foreclosure.
typewriters, computers.
That's
But
not
always
real property.
Yeah, tax auctions, procurement, all the other things, great. I think that's getting rid of personal property, whatever. I just see this as being a loophole for someone to take advantage of just getting whoever the highest bidder is. And whatever you decide in here to be like important is out the door if someone can pay the most for it.
Well, I appreciate your comments and what I, what I heard, if I heard it correctly in my notes here, is that you basically, as a developer who sees these and kind of comes into a contract with these types of things,
Thanks, John.
you're not seeing any major roadblocks that you would be turned off by from a development standpoint.
No, I mean, I think I have a couple of comments. I think that with any project, even if it is 99% perfect, you're still going to get people that don't.
Yeah.
That's just.
Yeah.
We've had projects that people come out of the woodwork, and I've seen it on other competitors, friends, it is what it is. So I would just take that all with a grain of salt and realize that no matter what it is, it's never going to check 100% of the population. So when you're reaching out and you're going to 500 feet from the properties and all that, just be aware of the fact that not everyone's going to want it for many different reasons. And some are right and some are wrong. So that's just something to consider. I also think you just need to be careful about, and this gets back to somewhat of the local aspect, but involving the town staff, because they don't live here. And I have had to work with them. I think a lot of them are great, but they don't have a vested interest in the town. Not the same that the town council does. And what you've gone through or what you've seen happen and occur, I just don't think that that's something that you're going to benefit from. The Planning and Zoning Commission makes the decision. Let them make the decision. Historic District Commission makes a decision. Let them make the decision. Put it to the people that are actually going to really be impacted by it. And if you follow this process, you're going to know. And if you do solicit if you solicit the neighborhood and 99% of the people think it's crazy, well, then maybe it is crazy. But if staff loves it, town doesn't, people don't like it, or vice versa, like maybe you're not following the right path. That's all I can say. But to your point, yeah, I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I would encourage you to push forward with it. We still have a great economy right now. We still have a lot of jobs coming to the area. We have a lot of opportunity. I mean, we're beyond slammed. I just would hate to see this thing get pushed off for so long that there isn't an opportunity to take advantage of something.
Our goal is to get it to council on the 23rd as a draft.
It doesn't, in my opinion, I know I openly said on the record that our town staff should be still interviewing people, showing property. even though we're not able to move forward because it would be down the line. So I'm hoping that that process is still happening where folks are still reaching out and engaged in seeking town-owned property and interest.
I can tell you, we've reached out for 3 years now in a row about 2 pieces of property. And all we've heard is that the town council isn't moving forward. That's it. And we've tried over and over again. And we're ready to deploy cash. I mean, I don't need to go get financing from someone. I mean, we are ready to do a project and can do a large project. And you need housing. The town needs housing bad. And it needs different rate housing too. You know, it doesn't necessarily need all the standards with $1 million condos. There's a great opportunity to build for mixed income, for low income, for affordable, for market rate, whatever. You're gonna, if you have 5,000 people coming, you have no place to put them.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, we're hoping to present and pass a document that is solid enough that once it's passed, like the next day, it can start.
Yeah.
And we can start getting shit done.
I mean, I'll keep asking and I'll be here when you do get this finished. You know, I'll be one of the first people to,
We welcome you to
Oh,
the
something.
23rd to speak in favor.
I'm just saying, don't lose the opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, 2009, when I left, it was tough. Half of Mystic was empty.
Yeah.
So, and that can happen again. So that's all I have.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for your time. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So we can go back to the.
Page 7, yeah.
You were redoing paragraph 2.
So paragraph 2 now reads, town council will direct the property reuse committee to oversee and manage the RFP process to fulfill the disposition direction as dictated by the town council. The property reuse committee shall be chaired by 1 town councilor as appointed by the mayor, as well as an additional 2 town councilors with minority representation, 3 representatives from the RTM as selected by the moderator with minority representation, and the town manager or their designee as an ex officio member. The question that I had left out there that wasn't resolved is, do we want to add a sentence that says additional members may be added at the leisure of the property reuse committee? Or do we just want to leave it?
Why wouldn't you include it for more flexibility?
Yeah.
I would say maybe at the decision of the chair.
Ad hoc members, we can even call them.
I mean, you agree? I mean, why not? If there's a need for more people.
Okay.
I think you ought to add the word somehow, add the phrase in skilled in whatever in oversight, or I don't know how to say that. But someone who is a tracker or will perform the oversight function. And certainly RTM has people that would do that, for sure.
Sure.
You know, but those are the ones I would be looking for, you know, that who want to perform the oversight function.
Our quorum numbers is 5.
Bring other people in, same logic.
Qualified and engaged in performing.
Experienced.
Qualified or experienced. Qualified seems a little bit experienced and engaged in oversight this process. Members should be experienced and engaged in performing. Does that look good to you, Bob? Does that look good to you? The members should be experienced and engaged in performing.
I thought it was how. That's your way down.
Zoom out.
Yeah.
There we go. So that's how it reads.
Sure.
Yeah.
Flexible enough.
So that means
Well, let's see.
we would then get rewritten, and I have this
Maybe
recommendation.
members should have the skills to perform oversight.
Should have the skills and desire.
And time.
Not a
Skills.
lot of desires. I wouldn't put desires on there. Just have the skills. That's enough.
Skills.
Skills and experience.
And experience.
Because the town council's got to take a look or whatever, you know,
Yeah, and performing oversight.
just some guidance.
So if we're good with that, we'll move on to 3, the property reuse committee, not the town manager. Property reuse committee shall create a request for proposal RFP subcommittee, which will consider all the information which will consider the direction by the town council. All information provided by the TOP committee final report on the particular property.
And all.
I don't know. I don't know.
That's, yeah.
I think this is a town staff function.
The RFP subcommittee should just be town staff.
It's led by the town staff. They're the ones deal.
It includes the town staff.
Yeah,
Are we talking about issuing the RFP or are we talking about the selection criteria?
but soliciting, talking to developers.
That's staff. Yeah, I agree.
Of the town, not you and me.
This is just the subcommittee.
I take hardship with not having any citizen or elected representatives being at the table, writing the RFP, creating the weighting criteria, doing the scoring. I think that all needs to have other than town staff.
Yeah, we're down on writing. I don't see, I mean, we have, it's a town.
And that's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Writing it down.
Yeah, they write that down. The oversight looks at this, no, we don't like those words. You don't, it's too loose here, it needs to be tightened there. That sort of thing.
Right, so this is the oversight
The
board.
staff is back in those rooms. They're doing it.
They're doing it, right? So what I imagine is we've got the PROC. Mr. Eric Goodman comes in and says, hey, I want to develop. What's one of the properties up there right now? Ledger Colonel, right? Pleasant Valley. I'm sure you know Pleasant Valley. I want to develop Pleasant Valley. And we go, okay, cool. The town council, we go, TOP committee gives a report to the town council goes, hey, turn these into houses. And so the PROC then goes, okay, we need to create an RFP to create housing at Pleasant Valley. I need Bob to write that. I need Paige Bronk to write that. And I need someone from District 4 RTM to write that.
See, I don't think I think the town writes the RFP.
Yeah.
I think that there needs to be substantial input from other than town staff.
I don't think on the writing. I think on the town staff does the writing. And it's provided to whatever committee can review it, make changes, but they're not.
Right.
No, I'm not saying like it's gonna be me hammering out the RFP.
No, but I think when
We're
I'm,
gonna have this discussion, 3 people are gonna have this discussion about.
what I've seen in other towns and what I read is, and what I haven't seen here a lot of is we should be doing what our community wants. What is our long-term plan? What are we trying to do? We do all these studies and then we say, oh, this is what it came back. What are we doing? We should be directing staff as a council with the help of this property use committee and group to guide the staff to write the RFP process based on the wishes of the community.
Because also consider this, John Reiner spent a week writing this RFP process. And he goes back to the property reuse committee and they go, what is this? This isn't doing anything that we want it to do, or we were really thinking about this. Like I said, the additional other than town staff members aren't necessarily going to be the ones grinding out the type work, but they need to be there directing and informing and having that discussion of, we need to put the weighting of public access at 30% of the criteria and, you know, bike paths at 10% for this property. You know what I mean? Like,
Because it
that
all,
needs to be,
So that's
the state.
the community requirements. That's what the community wants.
Right, and like I said, I wouldn't want the PROC to like hand this off and say, hey, go write me go write me an RFP for Pleasant Valley. Because that's already what's happening and we don't like it.
well, I guess, I mean, what I'm trying to say is like the council might say, hey, we have this property and, you know, okay, what's the consensus of the community? What type of development we're needing there? Okay, and so when our town staff go out to solicit developers, bring in development, they should be going out with that mindset, not, you know, anything, you know, it should be kind of a thought process as to what we're looking for. Because you can write an RFP, but a lot of our RFPs have been very driven towards this is what we want. And a lot of it has been, none of it has really been really only until recently. Nothing's been mixed use housing. It was all, we need high-end housing for EV employees.
Because who put that input into the RFP?
And a lot of people I'm talking to are feeling like they're getting maxed out of here. I live over in the city. The amount of cars that are leaving Groton every day are a lot. By adding high-end housing, I don't know that that's going to create the retention. That's one side of the story. The other side to me is we don't get some good development in the city side of Groton. People come here. They don't want to stay, live here, work and play. So has to be some type of input on direction as to what the plan is. And
Right.
we just don't want RFPs being written blanketly because this is gonna fit a TIF agreement. Is it a need or want?
It is a urban planning, I'll say, school of thought that you solve for the need of lower income housing by giving higher income earners somewhere different to live, to vacate that property, which would be for lower income. And I think when you have urban policy being transmitted through RFPs in this way without that additional community input, that's when you start seeing these RFPs dinks and luxury apartments. Because yes, the end goal is to get more mixed housing for Groton, not necessarily building new mixed and low income housing, but instead building high luxury to vacate other properties that then get sold to those middle and low income earners. That's an urban planning school of thought, and that's where I'm going to make the assumption without any other kind of knowledge. It's just a swag, right? While I guess that's where you're getting that from, and that's what I would want to prevent by having an RFP subcommittee that includes town staff and community members, right? So when I have to sit down and write RFP for Pleasant Valley, I don't want it to just be a town staff member with all of their amazing knowledge and experience, and they know all of these schools of thought of urban planning. I want them to bring that to the table, but I also want to have a town councilor or an RTM member or someone else.
Proposal after Pleasant Valley would have gone through the.
No, it wouldn't have.
Today, well, after this,
No, it wouldn't have.
why not?
Because someone would just say, I want to develop Pleasant Valley, and then we would look at it and we'd give a recommendation to town council, and town council would direct make the RFP. The TOP does not write RFP.
No,
No, but it would go through the top to begin with.
the TOP would determine what the proposed reuse is. Okay, and
But the TOP's not saying what weighting should be put on all the criteria.
no, but what you do come out with the recommended proposed reuse with minority opinions.
And then the town
So
council.
there's
might-
no surprise as to the town council chooses.
Right.
That's their job.
And it's the town council deciding what weight to assign to all the criteria. Is that what you're gonna have this group of folks here decide that before telling the property reuse committee? I guess I don't understand, and I'm trying to just keep an open mind here. I don't understand why we wouldn't want community engagement in the writing or community involvement in the writing of the RFP. Why would we want to just hand it to a town staff and call it a day?
Well, because they're the paid professionals to do the
I'm
work.
not saying don't include them.
Wait, but
I'm saying
I think what she's saying is
Okay,
the people who live here should be helping make the idea of what we want.
Right.
Should be driven by the community at large. They're writing
And
it,
if
but
they're-
there's,
What if you
I'll
don't
say
have
best
someone in
practice.
communities that's interested?
well, like everything, it gets drafted, an RFP gets drafted,
Let-
goes out for comments to the world.
Absolutely. It does not go out to comments for the
Well,
world, and it should not go out to comments for the world.
Well,
because
that's
that
the world, to the,
to the prop, and that kind of stuff should be done in executive committee so that you don't have developers who have been following, developers who haven't been following. This, I evaluate art, like, right, this is my expertise now.
my model.
What I'm saying is, it is never appropriate to have one person write an RFP. Like, you can do the actual physical hammer it out on a computer by yourself, but you should never be the only one with input on it.
so there should be a meeting where the town staff come to the town council along with this committee and say, these are our goals, what we're looking for.
That's fine.
Does it have
Well,
to
that's
come
the
back to the town? Does that have to come back to the whole town council? I mean, isn't that what the PRUC would do? Wouldn't it be the subcommittee who's going to write it? I think because you're going to write it, it's really tough to write a document, as we're finding out here, by committee. That's a tough thing to do. It's the RFP. They know what they're trying to go for, and they'll knock it out in a week or so, if that, and can turn it back for review of the PRUC.
Yeah.
The PRUC should have already. That's about as far as we want to go back, I would think.
I mean, the other thing to consider is that if you have 5 RFPs that come to your door at the same time, are we asking a town staff or a couple town staff members to write those 5 RFPs?
Are we writing
The edits from the PRUC?
Yeah.
and are we writing the RFP based on a developer that's interested, or are we writing an RFP based on the need of the community? One of the things I read when I was just going online, watching videos to understand this whole process, because this is not my expertise, is that they said it is very important that when writing an RFP, it's not driven by an interest of someone who came before you that you met on one of these business interactions and saying, you know, I want to build. And then you say, oh, great, what can you build? And they say, this is what we're looking for. We go, great, we'll write an RFP to meet that. Versus, are you writing an RFP to meet the need of the town? Not what the money's saying.
Here,
So that is important.
the first 2 rounds of RFQs and RFP that went out for state pier did not say the word wind anywhere. Until someone showed up and said, I want to put windmills out there and I want to do it through your pier. Because they were shopping around the pier to expos.
Well, not to be silly, but my history of these RFPs is one person, there's one original, there's one person writing it.
Sure.
Many people providing input.
Okay.
And review.
Yeah.
Okay. So that one person typing is a staff person.
Yeah, I totally agree the staff person should be writing it. I don't think they should be doing it in the back.
Right.
And I'm saying in the instance where if we get this up and running, it's very likely the town council will have several properties getting shoved into the. We say we are the product out of this. Are we going to want to be commenting? I mean, we could, and that's totally fine if that's the way we want to go. John Reiner comes to us at this council or committee and goes, here, I wrote 5 RFPs for different properties based on the direction of the town council. What do you think? And then we're commenting on 5 different things and we're all responsible for coming up with the criteria for 5 different things. I'm saying this is a matter of 1, sunlight, and 2, distribution of work.
Yeah, but
That's highly unlikely to have 5 all at the same time. I mean, that's an extreme example.
if you had 5, then once you would get 1 at a time.
I mean, the town staff couldn't handle 5 at once. You know, they couldn't do
They
that.
couldn't do it either.
No.
Right. And we would not be coming up with the criteria. We'd be evaluating the criteria that the staff had written for us.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree that there needs to be community involvement. I'm just not a fan of the community involvement writing the RFP. I think the RFP should be written by, but that's just my opinion.
The property reuse committee is not going to create a subcommittee then. Who's going to be so the town staff shall create a RFP.
Well, just to back up, I didn't know if you were doing, I mean, I'm not opposed to a subcommittee reviewing the RFP that's put together by town staff.
Yes, I'm not saying the town staff should be.
No, but I'm saying, I don't know if you need, who's gonna, the town, so we're getting to the point where past 2, we're on 3, the town staff creates the RFP. That we do need to make sure the community is involved in some degree, or the town council, or the up top, make sure that RFP is what we want it to be. So is that a committee or is that the main property reuse?
I think that
Or subcommittee here?
I would say that the property reuse committee, and this goes back to what Hal was asking, who signs out the RFP before it hits the street for developers? Is that the town council or is that the property reuse committee?
Okay.
Because that would determine how I would respond to your question. Who signs out the RFP?
The town council authorizes the manager to issue it.
So the town council is ultimately going to mark up this document and then the town manager kicks it out the door?
Yeah.
And that's how we're suggesting it should be?
Well, I'm only saying that the town manager issues the RFP after the town council is authorized to vote. So they looked at it, they vote, they authorize.
Is that a charter?
But I think the concern that, I think is your concern that in that situation, there's not enough level of detail in reviewing the RFP document to make sure it's meeting the goals of the community.
Well, then you don't authorize the town manager to.
But I think the purpose of what the subcommittee she was talking about was to make sure what the town staff puts together has the town interest.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yes.
and I think what you're saying is it shouldn't be the town council. Maybe the town council may not have the ability to do that. She's thinking maybe others should be involved in that process.
Okay, I realize that I've made an error of assuming that everyone here has the same level of detail in these processes as I do. We're going step by step to expand out the way this process, how I understand it to run, how it is documented in that draft policy that I put around. That RFP subcommittee, it's going to help write it. Town staff is going to be on the subcommittee. It's gonna write it. It's gonna help create the weighting. And then when it goes out to bid, proposals come back in. that RFP subcommittee is also going to do the evaluation and the scoring. So it has more functions beyond just one line of text, right? That RFP subcommittee is doing more work. And if you're saying you want the whole property reuse committee to be doing that work?
No.
Exactly.
Right.
So at what point are you setting up that RFP subcommittee?
Right, that, okay, you're gonna, I would think of that as the RFP review team, but.
Right, and that's who it is, but you would want the same people who have knowledge of what the RFP was supposed to be getting.
Which is generally 6 or 7 people. Now you can spend 2 weeks reading
Correct.
7 or 8.
And you don't want it to necessarily be only those people constrained to the property reuse committee. You want them to be able to go out and get more folks out.
Exactly.
So you're saying you want the evaluation committee to be involved in the beginning of developing the RFP committee?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
In the past, the town council is, the town staff has recommended members for the review committee. But that's my opinion.
But I think it sounds like she's bringing it to the table in the early process of developing the RFP.
So
Yeah.
here we go. I actually have a whole section of evaluating submitted proposals. Because now I'm getting my wires. The evaluation of proposals must be done by a property reuse committee composed of 3 or more individuals. The town council or designee must appoint the I'm mixing names of things. The committee's chair. If the RFP involves highly technical or obscure subject matter, chair may appoint technical advisors. Blah, 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 must sign ethical and confidentiality agreements. Town council depends on the prep to do a thorough and professional job on its behalf. Proposers expect the committee to evaluate their proposals in a fair and impartial manner. Selection factors for the committee: expertise, availability, perspective, professional standards, stakeholders, size and number, reporting relationships, diversity, skills for the chairs. In here, what we could also do is we could punt this whole conversation we're having to just say, as it's taken care of in the Appendix A policy, and then hash this out
Right.
after we get through. We could punt it. So.
Well, if that is the authority that we're going to follow, why would we want to point to it? Why create something?
Yep.
So let me just.
No. Town charter.
So were there any, do we want to try to punt this to the Appendix A policy?
Are you keeping number 4?
We haven't gotten to number 4.
No, I'm just wondering if
I would outline what the responsibility would be.
the initial responsibility was to make sure it follows the TOP, and then the secondary or the additional responsibility you're mentioning is the punt to future document, right?
Right. Well, I don't think we've made it past 3, which is the membership of the RFP subcommittee, if we want to have one. The RFP subcommittee shall be established for direction of Appendix A policy. Okay, so we haven't made up the membership of the subcommittee unless we have decided to scrap the subcommittee.
I think from my standpoint, if you bring in the subcommittee here, at least because that was what the take I had, was it looks like it takes away from the town staff doing their work. But as you further explained it, it's to assist in their knowledge to help out with the review of the RFP at the end. So I don't know if you can intertwine that in here, but I think that's an important piece.
The membership of the RFP subcommittee shall be as detailed in Appendix A. The membership.
And there's not a conflict having the people that are evaluating being involved in developing?
That's kind of like a perennial question. Some people say yes and some people say no. I guess it depends on how you structure your entire process.
I can see that coming up.
I can see that coming up as well. My issue is if you have people who were not, I guess you didn't write a good enough document if the people who are evaluating it weren't involved in writing it. I mean, that's the other thing is we can always say that the RFP subcommittee will write it and send it out, and then the PROC itself does the scoring and evaluation. Because this is already a big enough body to be doing that. As Bob mentioned, it's 6 or 7 people. It's not just 3. I would imagine that the RFP writing committee is 3 people, a town staff member, and 2 others. They kind of workshop a document. It gets sent to the town council for approval. The town manager kicks it out the door. Developers bid on it, send the proposal to a disinterested town staff member who holds it until it's time to unseal the bids. And then the PRUC would unseal those bids and score them, evaluate, and send their recommendation to the town council.
And the PRUC would have all the knowledge of the taupe from the beginning.
Correct.
The PERC has got too many people to me to be looking at bids.
How many people does it have?
Well, I had 17. Now we've cut it down. Three town council, 3 RTM. 1 staff, right? We said
Up to 3.
up to 3. 5 potential committee members,
We
ABC.
cut those.
Right?
We cut those.
We cut those. Okay, and
Any additional members that the reuse wants.
3. Okay, so we're down to 12.
I think it's less than 12. Yeah, I think it's less. I think the revised document's less, Bob.
Yeah, the revised documents got 7 definite folks, and then the option for more.
3 TC, 3
Should
RTM,
add the
and 1
additional
staff.
staff.
They're the definites. That's 7. Okay.
I mean, 7 is a reasonable number.
I think 7's a reasonable number, especially for something that's important.
And 3 residents,
That's it.
maybe up to.
Up to, that's ad hoc
Yeah,
at the
that-
discretion.
Okay, so 7. 3 TC, 3 RTM. Yeah.
So, right, so we've got 7 standing and then any additional ad hoc. And that's not to say everyone is going to want to or have the ability. I mean, there might be conflicts of interest where they can't participate, right? So 7 is a good working number.
If you go to 5, you're fine, right?
You go to 5, you're fine. That gives you some cushion. It gives you in both, conflict of interest, but also quorum issues. Someone might have something going on in that particular span of 2 weeks that they're otherwise totally available, but in those 2 weeks, they just can't. So I think 7's a good number. Okay. Creative will consider the direction by the town council. Membership of the RFP committee shall be directed as detailed in Appendix A. Membership shall consist of 1 town staff as assigned by the town manager. And 2 additional members as assigned chair of the property reuse committee. Let me defend the statement real quick. It's a good statement if you have to defend it. That gives flexibility to give people who maybe aren't sitting on the chip in. That's where maybe your residents of the district don't want to be part of the full crop and can participate anyway. Or someone like me can step in and go, or Eric Goodman, right? He's like, I'm not bidding on this, but I've done a ton of hotels. And if the direction of the town council is to build a hotel here, you're going to want to look at this, this, and this. That's kind of the technical advisements that are discussed in the Appendix A
Where would I find that in Appendix A?
in a previous version, because I don't think it got stuck onto this.
It's not on this one.
You can have my copy saying the version.
I just want to be, a little bit like, thanks.
Sorry, let's go.
No, it's okay. Do you know whereabouts it would be?
14, I think,
Page?
not for, section 14
Section 1.
of the book.
So it's just basic, it's not. Yeah, thanks.
I am still on 3.
Oh, okay.
Kyle, you still with us? Hey, he's not sharing his dinner. If we're good with 3 as it's written on the screen. I've got changes. On 4, I would say, I would cut out the word initial and just make their responsibility. And because I don't like adding an apostrophe S to an acronym. be the responsibility of the profit.
Well, it should be the requirement set by the town council and the total, whatever, but
And that's how I have it written on my sheet.
Mhm.
Shall be to ensure that the RFP meets the requirements as directed by the town council.
yeah, I wouldn't, not the total.
And directed by the town, because right, this committee speaks to the council.
Yeah,
If the town council, because the thing is, the majority recommendation wouldn't matter if the town council decides to go against the, like, what if the town council goes, oh, we actually like the minority recommendation.
Yeah, the tope's done at this point.
Right.
So done. Love the taupe, but done. Fine, done. Right, of the Shelley article times as directed by the town council. Town will commence the town will commence the RFP writing process.
the town, saying town staff or.
The town. Well, if we're making a subcommittee, which includes town staff. Actually, I would take 4. Can we back up for a second? Can I make 4 go above this? So that it's after.
Yeah,
Explains more.
that makes more sense.
Do you think it should even go before
We-
establishing the committee members?
Yes, because that's just the first place it should be mentioned is what the responsibility is. So yeah, up there.
Right.
You know,
So, and then we will break out. There we go. The responsibility of the PRUC shall be to ensure the RFP meets the requirements directed by the town council. Well, this two is kind of redundant. Town council will direct the property reuse committee to oversee and manage the RFP process and fulfill the disposition directed as dictated by the town council. The responsibility of the PRUC shall be to ensure the RFP meets requirements.
Same thing, yeah.
Well, it's redundant.
Mhm.
I was so tired of that. Happy with 3.
you should be getting rid of the words property reuse from then on. And just be the PRUC because you've already identified it. You should be identifying it in the first mention, in number 2, property reuse committee, the PRUC, and then we're done using the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll do that.
There you go.
We're glad we brought you on, Goff, here.
Shall create a request for proposal subcommittee.
Number 4,
Which
get
would-
rid of property reuse committee, the PRUC.
Right. Okay. Just
It's
call-
easier when you do it in real time, because then you don't have to go back and forth. It's such a headache.
Which will consider the direction by the town council and all information provided by the TOP committee final report on the particular membership of the RFP subcommittee. Can I actually take this now? Of the subcommittee shall be directed as detailed in Appendix A. The membership shall consist of 1 town staff member as assigned by the town manager and 2 additional members as assigned by the chair of the property of the PRUC. Ding ding.
Should you add in there, this committee will also be involved in the evaluation or something like that?
I think that the discussion we just had was that the subcommittee will write it and the full PRUC will
Oh, that's
develop
right.
it.
Yeah, okay.
And I liked that as assigned by the town manager and as assigned by the chair of the PRUC makes it so it does not necessarily have to be the same people who are on the PRUC. It can be if that's the will and just kind of availability of folks, but it can also be more expansive if desired and available.
What if the town chair can't find 2 people? Or there's not 2 people that are interested? I'm thinking 5 years.
I don't think that's a reasonable thing.
You don't think so?
You don't
5
think
years from now,
people wanna write
I don't
a
know.
policy? I don't know either. In which case, who's gonna be doing it? Just the town staff?
What's that now?
And we can't allow that. Pretty much, if you can't find 2 people, you can't have an RFP. That's how this would work. And I think that that's fair so that it's not just in a vacuum happening.
But that's what's happening now.
Correct.
Town staff is doing.
Correct. And are we all happy with that process right now?
No, there's definitely needs to be a review. I'm just back to writing it again.
Yeah, and like I said, it's not going to be like the town staff will hammer it out on a computer, but I think it's worth having other folks to dialogue with, to workshop it with.
Yeah, I just think that's gonna get hung up, but we'll see if this is what the committee wants to do.
And that's it. It could always be changed by the council.
Sure. Yep. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, I don't think it's the RFP is being written by 3 people sitting around a table necessarily. I think the meeting will be what we're thinking of here is that one town staff member will write it and send it to 2 other people to look at it and comment.
Yeah,
I think-
And then it gets sent.
Right, and I agree, which is what I was commenting before. The other 2 town residents are involved in the review of it. I just have questions over the writing of it, being involved in the writing. And I mean, you can, because you're knowledgeable enough to do that, but I just
Right.
concerned of others.
Right.
But anyway, moving on.
Who will have main responsibility for writing the text of the RFP, right? If we go back up to membership shall consist of the town staff member who will have main responsibility for writing the text of the RFP as assigned by the town manager, and 2 additional members as assigned by the chair of the PROC to provide comment, suggestions, oversight, whatever word.
Because you're trying to get community resident involvement.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Does that clarify better?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Consider primary. Instead of me.
What's our beef? What the word mean? Yeah, I don't mind adding the word primary on. Do we want to go comments, suggestions? Quotes, queries?
I
I
have
think
to
you
leave
guys,
soon because I have to be up really early tomorrow. When are we meeting again?
I think we're scheduled next Wednesday. And then the goal would be to have next Wednesday wrap it up. Be on the 23rd.
So with that in mind, I don't know. Do you want to include disposition of non-town owned property?
Well, on 5, you said the subcommittee. Wouldn't that be the Pruitt would commence?
Yeah, I would say, why don't we make this? Yeah. How much longer do you want to go for, like 20 minutes? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm gonna be like starting to wind down soon, only just. Yes,
I do.
but I can join via Zoom. I just have to get home to.
No, we can wind down. I mean, I think this last part is pretty much identical.
I think so, except for there's going to be less stake by the town because it's not owned by the town. Right. So if the state of Connecticut or the Fed want us to help assist or promote the sale of non-town owned property, an agreement between the town and outside agency must be entered into, which includes clear responsibilities. Language should be included detailing process to follow. Funding become insufficient to cover the services needed from the town. Any RFP process involving the town will require a similar RFP process as outlined above. Changes should not minimize the requirement for a full criminal background check and credit check. The review process will include an extensive internet search. And then number 3, any RFP review process involving the town shall include relevant town staff, representatives, RTM. Each of the 5, like I would workshop that for 3, be closer to what we have on the stuff. But again, I don't know what our authority dictate the RFP writing or selection committee would look like for non-town owned property.
Then maybe what you mentioned before is we don't present this to council.
I wouldn't pronounce.
Because we can just, this be a follow-up a month later.
This could be a follow-up. This could be, I would say, let the town council decide. Like if the feds want to come to the town council and say, help us with this, let the town council kind of say, how they want it to go. Because it depends on what the thing is.
And we can also say, we're looking to get feedback on these two main pieces, and then we'll,
We'll move forward with this. Yeah.
that way we can get them a document.
So I think the.
I'm back on 5 and 6.
Okay, yep, we're still on 5 and 6. What do you got, Bob? The subcommittee will commence the RFP writing
So I was
process
thinking,
of
would
detailed
that be the
independent
code?
thing. No, that'd be
They're
the
managing the process.
The RFP subcommittee will write it and then the product manage the process. So if we're saying.
But the RFP process is what? Issuing it?
It's writing it, issuing it, receiving the bids, evaluating, and coming up with a recommendation. So the writing it,
Okay.
that is all the subcommittee. The issuing it would be the town council would tell the town manager. So pretty much in my mind, we've got to get from the subcommittee to the town council. And that would have to go through the PROC. But taking baby steps here, the subcommittee will commence the RFP writing process as detailed in appendix A.
The RFP writing process.
The RFP writing process.
Okay.
Isn't that just the process?
Okay.
Yeah, so you create the subcommittee will commence. Then what happens once they write the RFP? This right here, this number 6 jumps the gun, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Number 6 jumps the gun. It should be the subcommittee. So I'm editing live up on the screen. The subcommittee will submit for review the written RFP to the property reuse committee. Reuse committee. Here's the thing: is this needs to be confidential because you don't want anyone out on the street watching one of these meetings to get an advance heads up of what is going to be issued in RFP, because you want a level playing field, right? I don't want someone to have 2 advisors working on their proposal, or someone who's only first going to know about it because they're on an email distribution list. So it would be a confidential discussion.
Add that in there?
Yeah.
You may want to use the acronym again.
Yeah. And I will explain that reason in an executive session to protect the confidentiality of the document and ensure all respondents have a fair and even time to prepare a response.
Fair and equal access to, yeah.
Fair and equal access. To fair and equal access to prepare a response. And then I would say 7 would be the PROC forwards the RFP to the town council for review. The town council will.
This is all executive session too?
Yeah. And I know that isn't always the best thing, but in this case, you want to protect that even playing field for developers.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's just a lot of
Executive session.
yeah.
I know that rubs folks the wrong way. I really do. There is legitimacy for executive.
No, I understand. I'm thinking of the other way of weeks.
Of weeks. And so if you go into Appendix A, it requires everyone in the process to sign confidentiality and ethics affidavits.
Yeah, we've never done those in executive session.
The affidavits.
Like as a counselor.
You sign it as soon as you sign up to being on the PROC
Oh.
or on the RFP writing process. Anyone who touches this needs to sign and ethics and confidentiality. You have to disclose if you have any financial interest that might relate to the work.
Fewer the better.
Yeah, the fewer the better.
Yeah.
It controls it, protects against leaks, and
Well, you have a whole council going to sign this.
well, so that goes back to who signs this out the door. And remember, the town council is approving this policy. If we recommend in this policy to have the PROC handed over to town staff to distribute, the town council would be, I don't want to say abdicating that authority, but delegating that authority. right? So the town council has already given their direction, go make me an RFP. We made an RFP. Do we really need to go back to them before we kick it out the door? Or are we going to allow the expertise of the committee and the town staff members who wrote the RFP to be sufficient, right? So we've had oversight of it, community oversight of this RFP before it goes out the door. Does the town council need to have another say before it goes out the door? And I want to remember the calendar of the town council too. The PRUC is much more fluid in how often it can have meetings. The town council could have special meeting just for this RFP. Will it? Can we dictate that they will? So that's where, if we want to recommend in our policy that the town council delegates the authority for issuing RFP after the PRUC finalizes it, we can make that recommendation and they can choose to accept it or not.
I kind of
I'm
like
for
that better.
I'm for that.
Yeah, me too.
I don't.
They can change it.
They can change it.
Right. Once again, I think it doesn't need to keep bouncing all the way back and all the way forward. We've already done the job.
Right, so once the PRUC evaluates and say finalizes an RFP, the PRUC will the town staff shall issue the RFP in accordance with Appendix A, because Appendix A has communications. Right. So now yeah.
You say prepare, it's 6, prepare a response. Is that a recommendation? We're recommending
Point me where you're talking about.
6, paragraph 6, the end of the first sentence, ensure response have a fair and equal access to prepare a response.
Yes.
But are they really putting together a recommendation?
No. So this is more to speak to why you are going into executive session. Right now, there's no bidders, right? But there's prospective
Written
bidders.
RFP, okay.
Yeah, so review the written RFP, give it to the PRUC, and in an executive session, the PRUC will look at it to protect the confidentiality of the
RFP
document.
that's going out is a public document.
Once it's out the door, it's a public document. While it's being reviewed and finalized, you don't. So Eric Goodman showed up tonight, and if we were talking about an RFP,
Okay.
he would have an extra 2 or 3 weeks to have his company look at their books, look at what they want to do at a site, start doing research.
Somebody can get a head start.
Someone can get it.
Okay.
So you want to protect the confidentiality of RFP before it is out the door. And that's again why there's like controls on ex parte communications, confidentiality agreements that get signed, et cetera, et cetera. You want everyone who looks at that RFP for the first time not have any advanced knowledge of it.
Makes sense. But okay.
I'll give you for an example, right? Dillon Stadium in Hartford was a soccer stadium that had huge historical significance. There were a lot of ADA compliance issues. The city had tried multiple times to try to get it developed.
Yeah.
And they decided through the CRDA, quasi-public agency, to put it out to bid. But they already knew they wanted to do it because they already approved the developer. And that developer already went, talked to an architect and got quotes and had a whole draw. And then they said, wait, someone's going to be mad about this. So they called up 2 more developers so they could get 3 bids. Got 3 bids in the door. Those 3 bids look very different. And one of them included knowledge that there was $10 million worth of bonding on the table, which 2 of the respondents didn't be in. And then guess who won that bid? So keeping that advantage even, just it protects the town and it protects the developers. So that's, if I need to wordsmith that to make it more clear why we're having executive session.
Good, I got it.
Oh, I'm trying to sell you on this.
Huh?
You with me?
Yep.
All right.
Can I just
Yes,
suggest
ma'am.
a little wordsmith from number 7, or just to keep with the flow of it, is upon receipt of proposals. Just start it with that phrase. Because that's what's happening. There you go.
So the town staff shall issue the RFP in accordance with Appendix A.
Right.
And
So
then
now
I
it's
don't
out.
think there's anything that needs to be said because Appendix A says how, not only how to write it, but once you kick it out the door, what's the process for accepting bids, unsealing them, evaluating them. I don't think that there's much to be said until we get to the PRUC evaluates the bids in accordance with Appendix A and offers a recommendation to the town council. And the town council then makes a decision on the developer. And once the decision on the developer is made, it's up to the town staff to negotiate that contract. The PRUC doesn't need to be involved from there on. On receipt of so the valuation shall occur in a policy section in Appendix A.
Okay.
Once a recommendation is reached by the PRUC, the recommendation shall be forwarded to the town council. Okay. There it is. The PRUC recommendation and any other relevant information shall be forwarded to the town. And in the next available COW, entering and exiting executive session strictly as needed, appropriate and allowable information disclosed ending with a vote on the record as to which town council shall vote on disposition. This could mean selecting a developer, abandoning the process, doing nothing, or selecting a developer, or not, or providing new direction to the project. This vote could end the process by doing nothing. Like it doesn't have to end in a developer being chosen.
Right.
Okay,
So the evaluation of proposals shall occur in accordance with the policy set forth in Appendix A. Once a recommendation is reached by the PRUC, the recommendation shall be forwarded to the town council. The PRUC recommendation and any other relevant information shall be reported to the town council and in the next available committee of the whole meeting, entering and exiting executive session strictly as needed, with all appropriate and allowable information disclosed prior to and after each, the town council shall vote on disposition. This could mean selecting a developer or providing new direction to the property. This vote could end the process by deciding to do nothing with the property. That is all that we can and need to
well,
do.
let's go back up there where this could mean selecting a developer. I would you say this could mean selecting a proposal?
Well, a preferred,
Well, I don't
preferred
I'd say maybe not
by selecting a proposal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Proposal.
Is that accepting a proposal or is that selecting a proposal?
It'd be,
It's accepting a proposal.
well, if I'm presenting you with two proposals, are you accepting? I guess I'd say selecting versus accepting.
Okay.
Just that way there's a little bit less of a normative statement or spin put on it. I don't know, what do you think, counselors?
Someplace you need to accept the proposal.
Say, identify a.
Accepting the preferred proposal.
Well, there's, what if the preferred one put up by the PRUC isn't the one selected?
True.
I try to do them. I'm not
You
too.
identify the proposal that best meets the closest meets the whatever.
Mhm.
They either accept one or they don't accept one, so.
Proposal or providing new direction to the property. And then I would say the town council shall direct town staff to move forward with the selected, I'll get my word in there, proposal. Agreed. I think that's the end of the prox involvement.
Yeah, now it's council. Yep.
And now it's a council issue. And all of this, like about hearings and such, I think we don't have necessarily the authority to be directing the establishment of public hearings like this.
Well, is it going to need to be in the document at some point though? Or is it you saying it's not needed? I mean, it was in the original document. That's where it's coming from.
The selected proposal. So what are we saying is that we think that, I guess if we're selected, what do we want to happen next after the town council direct the staff to move forward with this selected proposal? Do we want to say that there must be public hearings? Do we want to say it has to go to the RTM for approval? What do we want to say happens next? After we've done all this work to vet, create an RFP, vet proposals, and send a recommendation to the council, and the town council decides on a proposal.
I can't see a public hearing. Unless that's in the RFP, you tell them we're gonna have a public hearing. Your
Yeah.
proposal will be subjected to a public hearing.
Proposal made.
Yeah.
From here on out, I think it should be stuff like the town council may hold a public information meeting to present the preferred purchaser, because the cow is happening publicly. Is that one of those meetings where, as it stands now, public comment is allowed?
Not in the cow.
But I wouldn't have anything to say about a proposal I don't know anything about anyways, so I'd have to say it at the next day. But I guess if I'm not,
Well, there needs to be public information out there for sure.
about the preferred proposal.
No, I'm saying, well, there's lots of information in the beginning, right? Just not,
A lot of public input availability.
but not once the RFP is issued.
There definitely needs public engagement.
Well,
They need
for
to be
the town
informed.
council.
They need to be informed.
Okay,
But
so how about we
if
say
it-
this?
At this point, if it is an accepted, let's go back to my wording here, is if it is an accepted proposal, at that point, it's a done deal.
Right, so the prop recommendation and any other reference, blah, 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 shall be reported to the town council. Okay, period. The town council shall hold a public hearing on the recommended, on the proposal, on the, so the town council shall hold a public hearing on the proposals forwarded to the council by the proxy. Right, because
Can they see their proposals though?
On the proposals,
No, wouldn't they
They're
just, it would
redacted.
just be on, it would just be on
shall hold it on
the PROC recommendation.
on non-confidential, because this would speak to Portia's concern that she never knew about Groton Housing Authority because it wasn't recommended. So if we're only setting them the recommended, no one else in the public is going to know who else responded to
Right.
that until after.
I
the
also
fact
want-
with FOI.
I'd like a breakdown of the aftermath of like, well, why were they chosen and who else applied?
Public
I don't know.
informational.
I've never seen this done before.
I've never done it, but I haven't either, but we're trying to address that concern of where does it go from the people who evaluated it and the town council
It
choosing
would be,
it?
you could
How
have,
does anybody else?
We did get it once we asked at the end, and then I saw the review. I got to
You
see.
got it at the end though.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the other thing is, let me play devil's advocate. The public is supposed to be trusting the town council to make these choices.
Yeah.
You know, so having them come in the interim and
When it came to the,
sticker on a whiteboard. about-
when it came to the council, Groton Housing Authority was already not on it.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm voting on is what they sent forward. That's it.
yes.
That's tough.
Here, let me say this. I think that the wording in there about, with all appropriate and allowable information disclosed prior to the executive session can include the non-confidential information of other proposers, right? So that would say, the prop comes forward and says, this is our preferred developer. They want to put multifamily housing there. We also got proposals from ABC Corp and the Groton Housing Authority. ABC Corp wanted to put mixed-use development, coffee shops and offices. The Groton Housing Authority wanted to put low-income housing. We chose X preferred developer because we felt it met the weighted criteria better, and we can explain that more. Or, you know, we felt it had a better. You can talk about non-confidential information of the
So
proposals.
no, I see all this as a press release or a press release format. I mean, a public hearing is too late. The deed is done, right? We're not going to have a public hearing and change our minds,
Right.
right? So what's the point of?
So then, should there be something in here, though? Okay, where do I see the benefit of seeing what the other ones were? Let's just say something, oh, we've had this happen recently. Developers pull out.
Mhm.
Are we addressing the process after that? Do we go back to a whole fresh RFP, or are we looking, is there any protection here to go down the line and look at those scoring sheets and have another, I mean,
I would say yes, because you're going to be even, okay, let me put it this way. We're disclosing in public session so the public can know. We got 3 developers, XYZ, they wanted to do XYZ. I know that we're going to be talking about that in executive session. I don't know who's gonna say what, but I know that at least I know you're talking about the Groton Housing Authority and AZB Corp and Eric Goodman. I know that, okay. And what comes out of it, at least I knew that going in, right? Inside executive session, you can look at all of the weighting criteria, you can look at even the financials. And if the preferred developer pulls out,
right,
you've already had that discretion, and you can say, well, it was a really close tie between A and B. Why don't we take another hard look at B and see what we can do with that? Or, man, really hated B and C. It sucks that A is not here, restart the process. And it's not like it's going to be a whole rigmarole, because you've already done all of the work for that property through the TOP committee. You already have the recommendation for the property. It's just a matter of, hey, do we need to tweak this RFP? Or do we just need to put it out for bid again? You know what I mean? It would restart the process at this level, the prop level, and not necessarily the TOP level.
Well, just to go back to what you're saying, you didn't know about the housing authority. No, what the town council authorizes the town manager to start contract negotiations with someone. And you just hold back that authorization. You a lesson learned, okay? And not criticism, but you could have at future not authorized any contract negotiations until you know all the bidders, all the responders.
yeah,
You know.
unfortunately, there, me alone is one vote.
Well, then,
Yeah.
so, well, that's the process,
Yeah, you're gonna need a majority to pass that.
As to your, so this could mean accepting a proposal or providing new direction to the pro. This vote could end the process by deciding to do nothing with the property.
I have to go, but you guys can continue.
Didn't
Sorry.
want to know your partners didn't want to, the other compadres didn't want to know the other bidders, really?
I think someone did finally ask at the end, yeah, but at first it was the Mystic Oral School was gonna go through,
Yeah.
right? So.
Let's not digress. I can't, I'm losing my train of thought here.
All right.
Maybe we take this for next Wednesday. This is a big one.
Can you give me 10 minutes on the next agenda over this?
Yes.
There's some important elements.
Can you send it out again so I can make sure to put it on the agenda?
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Portia.
Yeah, I have to be up so early.
I'm not saying. That's the main gist of what's left, is deciding who gets to see what at the end. Right, that's where we're at.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn has been made. Off here.
Lauren, bravo.
All in favor, 1, 2, 3.
Meeting
All in favor of the
all.
motion to adjourn, 1, 2, 3.
Aye.
Stay.
3, 4.
No.
Robert rules.
Don't need to do that. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Bye,
Al.
Al.
Bye-bye. Thank you.